What's up, Nerfers? Welcome back to the show. It has come time for our yearly recap. What is it? I think this is our second one, actually. I think this is technically our second recap where we've actually gone over the past year.
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna say it's time. Time has come again, but I had to think about it for a second. It's like, no, we did one of these last year. I'm
Right.
pretty sure we did. What happened in 2021? How did we feel about the content? We definitely still want to hear about what you guys thought of all the movies. I want to know what your top lists are. So hit those down in the comments below. Let us know. Hit us up in the comments now if you are live. I'm gonna reiterate that over and over again. We are live. Don't forget to subscribe so you can catch future live shows. Mr. Josh Howell, how are we doing today?
We're doing good. How are you? And now that we're not having technical difficulties like yesterday. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yesterday was the original plan. Things went a little haywire. So yeah,
We
we're
tried
online,
to
but
make it
we're
work.
So we should have done this before the show, but like I don't like you've done some pretty elaborate slideshows for us before. How do you want to kick things off? Do you want to just kind of jump in there? Like what do we want to do here?
Well, okay, so we want to do a recap. I think we did 3 things. We did
we did our favorites,
our top
picks,
our worst or most disappointing, and our surprises. So I think I just did those in that order: yours, mine, and then the next category. Yours, mine, and the next category. But overall, first of all, 2021 had a lot of content in it, especially after 2020. I think 2020, everybody was struggling for what to put out. Netflix was the only consistent producer of new content throughout the year. But 2020, granted, you had a lot of people pushing their stuff out of the first 2 quarters, but there was a lot going back. There was a lot of stuff this year, and especially in quarter 3 and 4, there was a ton of stuff. But I was quite impressed on, going back and thinking, oh my gosh, that came out this year and that came out. It felt like a long time ago, but there was still plenty of content, I think.
Yeah, 2020 was kind of nice because I'm normally behind the curve, and I'm trying to fix that, but I'm normally behind for the most part when catching up on new shows. And so 2020 was great because I was still behind, but not quite nearly as much as the movie industry.
You got back like a year.
Yeah, it was nice. It was like hitting daylight savings. I'm like, all right, perfect, I can get a little caught up here. Then 2021 rolled around, and I did a better job this year of keeping up with content that was coming out brand new, fresh. Still not quite where I would want to be, but I've made some time for some new stuff. And we're still running into stuff that was delayed from like late 22 to 2021. Like there are projects out there that have been pushed out just that far simply because of continued COVID concerns. And considering that still doesn't seem like it's going to be going away anytime, still not anytime soon. We're probably going to be seeing stuff in 2022 that was meant for this year, or for 2021.
For sure. For sure.
Well into like the end of 2022 and maybe even the early part of 2023. So, I mean, our best wishes still with the creatives out there, the filmmakers, the showrunners, the people who are trying to get this content out there, still continuing to this point. But for right now, let's jump in to our best. Do we want to start with our best? We want to start with our best for 2021? Let's do it.
I think best, and then worst, and then surprises, because I think surprises is normally like a good thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And
I wanted to bring
the horrific
back up.
We want to make sure that everybody is aware that we are going to be one of the many sponsors for this event, the Horrific Hope Film Festival 2022, put on by Victims and Villains. If it was nearby, we would attend in person, but it is not nearby us on this one. So if anything, we're going to be able to make it. We're going to be doing some virtual stuff, and you can do that too. So be sure to head over to their event page. Josh, you have more details on this than I do.
I do, and it's still in prep. I mean, there's still a lot of stuff coming in, but it's scheduled for the 28th and the 29th. No, actually the 29th and the 30th. It's going to be a Friday night digital stuff for kind of the runner-up materials. And then the 30th, they're practically renting out a screen at the Alamo, and they're just going to be doing these shorts and feature films all day through there. And everyone
the 30th of April, by the way.
Right, the 30th of April.
Not the 30th of this month.
No, yes, 30th of April. So if you are a filmmaker and you have a short or a long form horror piece that you want to submit, there's still plenty of time. You missed the early bird, but the regular deadline is the 15th. Late deadline is the 12th of February. And there's some rules on here for, the types of content they're trying to avoid. Nothing sexually explicit. I think sexual assault is something they don't want to see. It doesn't have to be focused on mental health, but Victims and Villains is very much about mental health. And so if you do have a mental health thing, that might get yours more considered. But still trying to get this out there. I think it'll be really cool. So check that out. But going back to what we were going to talk about. Let's see here. Let's start with you. Let's start with
me. Okay.
Now this was kind of hard to do because I wasn't gonna just do 5, but you just did 5 and you looped your TV and your movies together, and so I kind of tried to mirror you. And we can talk about honorable mentions as well. But I was having a hard time because there was a lot of stuff that came out this year. I think
a lot of stuff, some good ones. And I knew that if I was doing 5 separate TV shows, I was like, I don't know.
Well,
if I've seen enough,
I didn't expect you to see that many. Yeah,
5 different TV shows and 5 different films all at the same time. I was just like, well, shit, that's gonna be a little tough. And honestly, I probably just read your message wrong, but I was having a hard time kind of putting everything in here the way that I want to. Originally, I was trying to do a top 5, but I really couldn't put anything in any specific order.
I didn't expect you to. Yeah, we're not 1 through 5 or anything like that.
It just kind of became these were the 5 ones that had, and it also had to come to a point where there were so many projects or so many titles that I enjoyed to that similar degree, to where I had to really think about the impact that it had when I first watched it on the same point, just sort of outside of it, which I'm actually going to start. I'm actually going to start from the right side. I'm going to go opposite just to annoy people. So we're going to start with Zack Snyder's Justice League. Now, I was not expecting this thing to ever come out, much less make my top list for the year. But
right.
I mean, just after following this subject for so long and knowing that it was at the time, knowing that it was just never going to happen, that Warner Brothers was just going to, they blue-balled the project, they were done with it, it was gone, never going to happen. And then just seeing continued random hints, which has evolved into people absolutely dissecting every single thing that Zack Snyder does on social media now of any kind. But that was weird. I'm on call right now, so if my phone rings, I apologize, but I have to disappear super fast to answer that. I have to be ready at pretty much any given point. No, the culture around Zack Snyder now is super scrutinous, and assuming that everything is part of his bigger universe, because now it has evolved from release the Snyder Cut to release the Snyderverse, or let him
restore
the Snyderverse.
Restore the Snyderverse.
Snyderverse,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I remember distinctly when this one came out. I watched it all 4 hours, single sitting, and I was having a hard time. I was just pretty much everything that I remembered that I enjoyed about the Joss Whedon cut was stuff that was in the Snyder cut, and everything that I didn't like was almost all of it was just completely missing from this thing. The only thing that I could really find as a nitpick towards this movie was just was the sound that they used whenever Wonder Woman was on camera was the exact same sound every single time. And even that was kind of a nitpick because it is so fitting, but the film just they dropped it. Honestly, I think this was even the primary driver for HBO Max when it was announced. Hey, we've got a streaming platform here. It's going to have all the DC content on there, and then boom, I think what was it? It was a Zoom call or something like that he had been doing with Henry Cavill as a watch party for Man of Steel, and he's like, "Oh, guess what? I've got a poster for this shit," and then boom, here we go. It's like, "Oh fuck, it's real," and everybody collectively loses their minds, and then then expectations get raised stupid fucking high,
for sure,
and then expectations got met. For the most part, expectations got met. I'm like, Jesus Christ! Like,
surprisingly,
so good.
I think that was. I think most people were just like, "Oh, just put it out already. We don't expect it to be great." And like you said, I think a lot of people were surprised that a lot of the comedy was still in there because people don't associate comedy with Zack Snyder. Yeah, a lot of the good comedy was in there. They just assumed that some of the lighter moments of the original Justice League was Joss Whedon infused. And
Justice for Cyborg. Oh my god.
Oh, for sure.
Justice for
sure.
Cyborg and Flash, big time. Like they weren't.
I think it was easy.
Characters. It was great.
It was easy to root for this because it felt like the only reason why it wasn't coming out was more vindictive than anything else. Like we had seen things like the same similar type of movement for the Richard Donner cut back in the day. I mean, there was a whole campaign. There was fans that were, doing billboards and sending letters into the WB, and they did it back then. And after a while, it really felt like the only reason we weren't going to get it was because WB had a vindictive issue with Snyder. And so I think HBO Max is what brought this out because they were rushing out this new streaming platform. There wasn't a lot of hype for it. And they're like, what can we do to get people to sign up? And this was it. And it's kind of crazy because of all the things that HBO Max did this year, screwing over other movies. This was one of their rare exclusives. This didn't go into theaters. This was just on HBO Max.
He was happy enough to have it happen, let alone be screwed over by getting box office stolen from him.
I know, but they did. It was everything I hoped it was. I love this film. I'm tempted because right now Mondo has this vinyl set. Oh my gosh, look how beautiful that is. It's like $200 though, so I don't know if I could swing that. But I love the soundtrack outside of the constant Wonder Woman sounds, but it was fantastic. I'm so happy it happened. It doesn't make it, people that don't like Zack Snyder, they don't think he's Scorsese now, but at least it did turn some heads and it gave some fresh perspective. And some people came back and said, you know what, this was better. And they shouldn't have done it like they did.
It was nice because Army of Dead didn't work out for me at all.
Oh, I loved Army of Dead. It's not on my list, but I loved it.
I was like avoiding it because I was like, if I put this on my biggest disappointments for this year, Josh is gonna fucking hang.
I mean, it's not on my list. It's on my top 10 with Victims and Villains, just because I really liked it. But
I didn't put it in my top. I didn't put it in my worst because I was really worried about it. The next one, yet again, you saw this. You saw Bo Burnham's Inside before me. But I was gonna watch it anyway. I remember you sending me a message, and honestly, I wasn't expecting you to watch it. Like I was just like, I didn't know if it was something that you would catch. But I'd been following Bo Burnham forever. His stand-up was always hilarious. He was very inspiring on YouTube and various other internet content, which is like a very different way for a stand-up comedian to come up, or at the time it was.
Certainly a modern way. Yeah, he was always kind of held out as the modern type comedian amongst the big ones. Yeah,
he was always held as like the super young comedian at the same time.
Right.
Just no matter how like mature his content got, or like the themes that it would hit, that moniker really seemed to stick with him. Then he has his special Make Happy that releases on Netflix. He ends it in tremendous fashion with a track where he really kind of like confesses what he really actually started talking about like the anxiety and the panic attacks that he was having on stage, and sort of his relationship with this type of performance and what it was doing to his mental health. and everybody kind of walked out of that special like, fuck, man, I don't know what to feel right now. But he stopped doing stand up for quite a while, and he did some filmmaking. Eighth Grade was absolutely wonderful. He really showed his chops in a lot of different areas. And then I hadn't even heard that this was coming out. It just showed up out of nowhere. I had heard about it. I was just like, oh, I'll absolutely check that out at some point. And then you sent me a message talking about it, and just how remarkable it was. And again, it was just it was an incredible experience, especially as an indie filmmaker, as an aspiring indie filmmaker. I can't call myself a filmmaker until I've actually put one of my short films out. I'm not counting the music videos that I've done, but what he was able to do with I assumed that he used multiple cameras because of some of the angles that he was able to do, but it could be just single camera. And
he did multiple cameras. For sure.
Like it could have been done with different ones, or with all the same camera, but a remarkable level of work. The cinematography, the lighting, the overall quality, the audio quality, like all of this being done, and then setting the stage in a single location throughout the entirety of the special, and really touching on the stuff that, I mean, in some cases that nobody wants to talk about, but everybody felt. And then also having it tied into just the horrible feeling of being isolated during the pandemic, or during the peak of the pandemic, and then having like this message to where it was like, my mental health was improving, and then COVID came around and just this plummet back right down. Like, we all resonated with that to a certain
degree. So much.
And and then his genius honestly show like his as a content creater and as an artist, it really, like, genius is a word that I would absolutely use to describe it, and I could not recommend watching Inside more. For the soundtrack alone, some of the just listening to some of the songs. You will get a taste. You can find them on Spotify. He released a vinyl.
I know.
Recently, of the album. I'll be picking that up as soon as I can. Like, it just a monument. Like every single time that he releases a video of some kind, one of them goes viral. And then he chose the one where he like shows like the true colors of the internet and perfect symbolism. He releases that one up again, boom, viral once again. And I can't recommend it more.
Yeah, well, his content has always been like magnifying glass on modern culture, on trends and stuff like that, and kind of shoving them back in your face. And if for somebody that came up on YouTube, he was very quick to come off of YouTube. I remember like they brought him out for like a YouTube year event, and that was kind of like his descent from YouTube after that point. Like, there was a thing where like Katy Perry did this whole thing with him on stage, and he was just not having it. And that's kind of been like a legendary moment of his where he like, graduated out of that space and then, went more. His content's always been edgy and always been like just super fine tuned, even if it's a little out there for you. If you listen to the message of the song or of the sketch, it's always like, oh my gosh, he's like right on the nose with what he's talking about. And so Inside was just another case of that. And I've seen people argue all day about whether or not it's legit, about whether or not it's fake, or if it's scripted or whatever. The truth of the matter is, it doesn't matter. It's really good. And it hit everybody at a time. Like, this was the same year when, this wasn't the same year because this came out in 2020, but 2020, okay. Taylor Swift dropped this album called Folklore. And it was like, Taylor Swift couldn't be on tour, so she went out and she recorded this album during the pandemic. And everybody kind of huddled around this and was like, oh, it's a little different than what she normally does. How cool is it that she was like forced to be creative in such a terrible thing? So everybody really liked that. But then the difference between that and Inside is that Inside was like, okay, he's going to talk about, like you said, maybe some of the stuff we don't really want to talk about or don't want to address. Some of the things that have been wearing and tearing on everybody. And some of them he put in a comedic light. Some of them he put in a not comedic light at all. And it was a challenge just to get through the song because you related so much with it. And so, whether or not it was scripted or whatever, it felt very genuine. And I think that's what I came out of it the most, just a genuine gift and presentation. And I connected with it so well. And so, yeah, I'm not surprised that this is on your list. It was a hell of a presentation, performance, whatever you want to call it. And it's certainly getting its accolades, and it should. He worked really hard on it.
Yeah, it deserves.
And it's great.
It deserves everything that it has coming to it.
Yeah.
Which, speaking of deserving stuff, Dune was next up on my list, and it deserves to have its part 2 made. And there was some question as to whether or not that was going to happen for a little while there.
Yeah. More WB shenanigans. Who would have thought? Gosh.
Yeah, who would have thought? It's what's really funny is I was as a part of my job, and I've mentioned this before, but I have to monitor channels, like cable TV channels. And I was flicking through, doing one of my checks, and the 1980s version of Dune popped on, and I watched. Like, it was I don't know what part it was on there. They were already on Arrakis. He was already part of the Fremen. And because I think that movie kind of goes beyond the story, but because the story of this most recent iteration kind of ends with him joining the Fremen. In this one, he had probably just done so.
Yeah. Well, this is half the first book. The David Lynch was adapting.
I didn't watch any further because I was like, okay, crap, I don't want to see this. It might have been one of the flashbacks. I don't know.
Count your blessings.
I don't know. I don't know if the 80s version did the same amount of flashbacks, but I'm watching it in a server room, so I can't hear anything. It's just loud fan noises and stuff like that. But it had popped on, and I'm looking at the visuals. I'm just like, Jesus Christ, this looks like crap compared to what we got. And of course, some of that is just time, but
it looked like crap compared to some of the stuff coming out around then.
Yeah,
anyway.
Even then, yeah. Honestly, the cinematics kind of remind me the same level that they put into Spaceballs.
Yeah, which was a parody.
Yeah.
So that tells you something.
It's super weird. But then we get this version. Denis Villeneuve. That's his name, right? Villeneuve? I'm pretty sure it's
got
Villeneuve,
it right.
But,
got it. Yeah.
Just the sheer something that gets mentioned a lot when this movie gets talked about is scale. And yeah, absolutely. From purely a cinematographer's standpoint, I have a deep appreciation and admiration of this film. One of the cleanest looking productions I've seen. Some of the best CGI. The best CGI that's out there is the stuff that you have to sit there and wonder, is is that CGI? I was like, no, they wouldn't use CGI for that. I was like,
right.
Obviously, a lot of it was very CGI dependent, but it didn't feel like it. It felt like a super. It was just a super clean, crisp. Loved the colors, loved the visuals. The only problem that I had with it is that they seemed to pack it with this all-star cast, and it's just every time you fucking turn your head, there was a major celebrity in the movie or something like that. It was just okay, this. It was
a stacked cast for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it was super stacked, and then it's part 1, and that was the most disappointing thing about it. It was okay, they filled this thing up for a part 1, and then after finishing the movie and being just awestruck, I was just like, Jesus Christ, that was incredible. Looking it up and finding out that they had just greenlit to make part 2, which is astounding to me. It was just I can't believe it was you signed on for something of this scale, and yeah, I could not believe that they relied very heavily on Zendaya in the trailers as part of the draw, and then you watch the movie and she's barely in it, but it makes sense that she's barely in it at that point because it hadn't gotten to the story. And I feel like a lot of that, most of the time, the director and the editor, they're not in charge of putting the trailer together. I
Mm-hmm.
think they'll provide content. Like I think the studio kind of got a little too involved.
Mm.
So there was some weirdness around it. Um, and then I watch it and I'm like, there was also some controversy around how much influence there was around other sci-fi projects. And then you look it up, you realize like, well, yeah, Dune was out before all of those sci-fi. Like this was the thing that everybody referred to. This was the sci-fi piece originally, the book
Oh yeah.
that people
Let me know
had
when you get
drawn
to
a lot of
this
their
week's.
inspirations from.
Let me know when you get to this week's Boba Fett, because they might as well call it Chapter 2 Dune.
Oh boy, that's
The
fun.
influences are strong.
Well, well, again, right there, like there's
Mm-hmm.
so many. Like George Lucas himself said that he drew a lot of inspiration from Dune.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, in a Sarlacc pit of all things, I was like, yeah, of course, it's a fucking worm. Like who would have thought? Yeah, there was a lot of interesting stuff in there. I really liked the magic there. I came from complete level of like I was a neophyte in the Dune world. I knew nothing about it. Cece ended up reading the book after watching the movie. She didn't. Spoiler alert: she didn't like the book very much.
Mm.
She. I'm not gonna go into her review of it for the most part, but yeah, she didn't tell me anything. She didn't spoil it for me. But I asked her, I was like, did it make you enjoy the movie any less after having seen that? She said no. She like the movie stood up
Okay.
without that book knowledge. So that gave me hope. I was like, all right, we're in good shape then. But yeah, overall, I thought it was a great job. I think that, I mean, yeah, it's a stacked cast, but it didn't like diminish the film at all.
Mm.
It was just like, all right, and it obviously didn't take away from the budget for them to make it look absolutely incredible having to pay all those people.
Oh, so incredible.
Like
Yeah.
so if it had been a stacked cast to its detriment, I would have been a little upset, but it didn't seem to affect it at all. So overall, it was a great film. Easy pick for my top 5 of the year.
Well, and you're talking stat cast. I mean, look how many floating heads are in this poster, and it's not even the full cast. That's how crazy it is.
Half the MCU in there right now.
Right. And this did annoy some people because, you know, Denis Villeneuve signed on to this film with the agreement that it would be a part 1 and part 2 filmed back to back. And then once they started filming, WB backed out of that deal and did this whole thing. Well, we'll see how it does before we greenlight part 2. So I can only imagine the frustration. And then when it was announced,
in charge of that deal read the rest of the book and he was just like, oh.
Well, I disagree, but and then Denis was kind of very open about his disappointment and his disapproval of the streaming launch day and date with the theatrical launch. He voiced his concerns very loudly, and it wasn't just from a money standpoint. It was from okay, first of all, you agreed to this, and then you backed out. And now you're going to like shoot us in the face while you do it and say, hopefully you make enough money. I really do think, while I don't think it would have made $1 billion like Spider-Man did, I do think it would have done better. I mean, it still made close to 400 million, but I think with all of because it released in Europe before it came here, and there was a lot of really positive talk about it for like 2 months before it dropped in the States. I think it would have done a lot better had there been at least a theater exclusive window instead of all of a sudden there was like a 4K version of it online that pirates could get, or you could, watch it with a HBO Max subscription you already had. But I mean, outside of all of that, this was a gamble for WB because Denis Villeneuve has his fans. His early works were fantastic. Arrival, Prisoners, Sicario, Enemy, those did really well. But as soon as they gave him Blade Runner 2049, there was a division in the response to it. There was the folks that are like, oh my gosh, this guy is like the Mozart of current cinema. I mean, you give him a property, he's going to produce a masterpiece. And that is what Blade Runner 2049 was. However, it divided folks because it was so faithful and it was a sequel that there was a section of people that disconnected with that. So then when they announced that he was going to do Dune, there was a section of people that were like, oh my gosh, look at how amazing, how much passion he put into Blade Runner 2049. If he does the same with Dune, that'll be incredible. And then there was another section of people that were like, I didn't connect well with Blade Runner. What makes me think I'm going to connect with Dune? Thankfully, it wasn't a sequel. Thankfully, he made it accessible to new and old fans, because I know a lot of people that have never seen Dune, never read the book, never saw the Lynch version, never saw the sci-fi series, and still really appreciated this for the lore and the references and seeing popular culture like Game of Thrones and Star Wars and how they all kind of came from the space story. And yeah, I mean, it was a big gamble, but I'm so glad it paid off because it was gorgeous and I cannot wait for part 2.
Speaking of gambles that weren't really gambles and were basically the exact thing that everybody had been asking for, the next one up on my list, Spider-Man No Way Home. We're still kind of close, but we're not close. We're not far away enough to where we're not going to talk spoilers. So we are going to talk spoilers at this point. If you hadn't guessed that, and the only reason I'm giving you a warning on Spider-Man is because it is still. I know that there's still some people that are
look at the picture I put up. I think that spoils that spoils a lot already.
Yeah, for sure.
Sorry.
Well, that wasn't. You didn't make that poster, so I'm not gonna.
No, but I chose it.
But I'm gonna talk full on spoilers. So if you're watching with somebody or something like that, I don't know. I think honestly, it was just instinct. It's like, all right, it's Marvel. I'm gonna avoid spoilers. I don't have too much to say about this because it was a great experience, but I had those expectations for it. This was kind of like I was going in with some cautious optimism, not gonna lie, because there are a couple Marvel properties that are actually on my worst list this year, and they were all pretty close to each other, and so I was like, well, shit, I'm a little concerned. It was just like, is Marvel dropping the ball? And we've all seen what Sony has done. Although after this movie, I've actually come to appreciate what Sony did with at least Andrew Garfield's side. I was already pretty appreciative of Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man movies, but yeah, this was as you put it, as you put it, this was the actual kickoff for Phase 4 Marvel. Like this was the piece that Marvel fans really needed to kind of get back behind. Behind Marvel and to be excited about future content, because I mean, not only just for like the fan service, but this actually puts Tom Holland's Peter Parker into a position to where, I mean, specifically around the multiverse, is like, who knows what they decide to do with his character in the future. He might just be getting better at doing press, but Tom Holland has been talking about how he's not sure he's going to play Spider-Man for that much longer. Maybe he's just got a better poker face when it comes to talking online, because he's been pretty notorious for dropping spoilers for other things. But yeah, there's some questions in the air about his future as the character, but this movie really put Spider-Man's character in the MCU in a really, really good place. Because prior to the events of this movie, pretty much everybody on the Avengers team knew who he was, and knew what was going on, and kind of takes away some of the intrigue. I mean, in the comics, Spider-Man's regarded as one of the best at keeping his secret identity secret, and so this puts him into a really good spot for future properties. But it also puts him into a good spot if they decide not to utilize him in future Marvel content. Obviously, I don't think that's the way that it's going to go, but just the way that they did it with Tom Holland's character alone was really good. And then as cherries on top, and instead of just throwing in cameos, they bring back Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire to reprise their characters alongside all of the villains who were already reprising their characters, which honestly, for the most part, was a dead giveaway that these two characters were coming back themselves. But I can't, like, there's not a single thing that I really think that they didn't handle pretty damn well out of this setup. It's like, yes, there's some plot holes. There's certainly some plot holes, and I don't think that there's a movie that I can think of that doesn't. have at least one. If you really dig deep, I'm sure you can find a lot in even some of the greatest films of all time. But yeah, this, and I'm not saying that this is one of the greatest films of all time, but it's definitely one of the best in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and it made my top 5 easily. Like the honestly, the first 3 here are kind of in order. So yeah, Arcane, Spider-Man, and Dune were big things for me. I started hunting down the books for Dune, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna read these. Like, this is nuts. I went back and reread a bunch of Spider-Man comics after watching this, just to kind of like relate back to some of the events that like they might be tying into, because there were some certain comic things that jumped back at me, especially his homemade costume at the end.
Sure,
that was a big one.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And then an Arcane.
Hold up. Let's not jump to Arcane
didn't
yet.
download League of Legends again, but got
close. Don't jump to Arcane yet. Spider-Man No Way Home accomplished so much, and besides the box office accomplishments in a pandemic era,
it broke a record for the Thursday opening, didn't it? It was like the biggest.
It broke several records. Yeah, it
was the biggest of all time for a Thursday weekend opening.
I think it's Sony's biggest film of all time. It's broken several records.
Sony's biggest of all time.
Yeah.
Oh shit. Okay, that's a good.
And then when you consider that with the pandemic variable, with the no Chinese release variable, that's pretty big stuff. But the other thing I think that should be praised is that it did incredibly well for a solo film. This is we've had some really good solo films in the MCU. I'm talking like Iron Man 1, Thor Ragnarok did really well. Captain America Civil War did really well, but rarely do
solo. That one a solo film, but yeah.
I didn't mean Civil War. I meant
Winter
Soldier.
Okay.
Yeah, not Civil War.
I'm on board with you now.
Not Civil War. Winter Soldier. That did incredibly well. But when you look back at all the other ones, like Civil War, like Iron Man 2 and 3, like Thor 2, even Guardians of the Galaxy 2, the solo sequels don't really do that. I mean, Ant-Man never rise to this level, but the fact that a third Spider-Man film is competing with Endgame and Infinity War in terms of box office, in terms of critical rating, in terms of audience rating, that's really astounding. I mean, that's an incredible feat for the Spider-Man, especially since, you're talking about how MCU has had the formula down, how they've taken their time. Spider-Man was kind of the reverse. They threw him into the mix the first time you saw him. He was with the Avengers up front. And then they've over 3 films have brought him back to where we all thought he should have started. There was a lot of people in the beginning that were like, oh my God, he's already with the Avengers. Like, we're not going to get a setup. We're not going to get a Spider-Man growing up thing. This is kind of ridiculous. And now they brought it back to where that natural start would have been. And it's like, oh my gosh, they've just built this crazy foundation for this character. And it is an accomplishment in many ways. And so, yeah, it deserves to be on this list, as does your last one here.
It was like the tip of the cap to like a really, really amazing origin story. It was basically all 3 were his origin story. And at the end of this film, he actually became Spider-Man finally. Like, this was like the end of his coming of age trilogy, which is really what it was. Yeah, Arcane was man, this was Arcane was the experience that I have been waiting for as a big video game fan for a very long time. Not as a fan of League of Legends, as a video game fan. Because over the last 3 decades that I have been alive, I have yet to have seen fucking a single video game property that did what Arcane did. You don't have to now. Like, if you haven't seen Arcane, I'm gonna preface this. You don't need to know shit about League of Legends to enjoy this.
You really don't. Yeah.
Like, honestly, like, like, and it honestly, like, and I've played a fuckload of League of Legends. Like, it was one of the bigger games that I had played for a couple years. Um, and honestly, like, it really it added to the experience for sure. But I had gotten pretty deep into the lore for at least one of the characters. Um, and so but it really only enhanced my experience, particularly around that character, which was Victor. Um, and the other characters, like, I knew of them, and there were certain things that I had known about them that kind of gave me a hint as to what their characters were going to do. But I mean, honestly, I mean, if you had read Dune and enjoyed the hell out of it, it's going to be kind of like the same experience. But
Mm-hmm.
Arcane did what I think every single studio that thinks that they should be making a movie or a television show out of video game content should do.
Oh
They
yeah.
took a deep they took they went deep. They chose a video game franchise with a very rich and a very diverse universe, and then made
Mm-hmm.
a show that had absolutely nothing to do with the content of the video game itself.
It's true.
It was like they based it inside that universe. They didn't try to. It was like, if you're not familiar with League of Legends, it is a 5 versus 5 top-down camera perspective, kind of like strategy level mobile game. Or not mobile game. I mean, it is a mobile game now, but
Mm-hmm.
it is, and it all takes place on a Summoner's Rift, and all these champions are fighting against each other. And then you have Arcane, which is a show that has mixed in um, like the true struggle of financial and societal inequality, political intrigue, the ethical dilemmas around scientific advancement, and sort of some of the desperation that can come about from toying with. I mean, you think about that Jeff Goldblum line, and it's like they spent so much time thinking about whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think whether or not they should.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a really good heavy theme around in that, and then also how power corrupts, like all of like the themes that would make a great piece of content. This show touched on. And then at
Mm-hmm.
the same time, there's a really strong family dynamic that you can identify with, specifically around Vi and Jinx.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Before they'd even come to their adult characters, this starts as when they're children, um, and like, you see the growth of these same characters. And again, this is another departure. There are over 130 characters in the League of Legends video game, and this only touched on a few of them.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's less than 10 actual champions from the game. That's great, because they did such a good job with this one, and it could lead into other pieces of content inside the same world. Like, I'm fucking stoked for season 2 of this show. Like, this show surpassed all of the Marvel shows for me. It was like, you'll notice none of the Marvel shows showed up on this list for me. They're honorable mentions for sure. Loki was number 5 for a little bit, but I really had to, like, I really wanted to get Bo Burnham's inside in there, so it got bumped. But yeah, honorable mentions for WandaVision, Falcon and Winter Soldier, and Loki. But Arcane buried every other piece of content that I had here. And I will add that I didn't watch Arcane until, like, you had already, like, tormented me about it a couple times. You're like, you've got to check this out. Like, it's incredible. I think you had already watched it through, like, twice. I think you had already watched it through yourself and then watched it again with your wife.
Mm-hmm.
And I came home from an insanely long work shift. I had literally worked 24 hours, and then I came home, and I needed to stay up a little bit longer, because I came home. It was like 10 o'clock in the morning after working the previous 24 hours, and I was just like, I need to make it until later in the evening so I can not screw my sleep schedule up crazy bad. I was like, all right, I'm probably not going to be able to watch too much of this. I'm going to start, like, the first episode again, because I started it, like, several times. It was like only 5 minutes in. I will say that the first episode, if it doesn't grip you there, you need to give it a little bit of time, because it is kind of a slow burn.
Mm-hmm.
but once it kicks off for you, it does not let go. I binged the entire series on 36, like I ended the series on over 36 hours of no sleep.
Mm.
I could not stop watching it. It was like if it had been a book, I would not have been able to put it down. Arcane was without a doubt the best piece of content for me this year. And I think it still would have held that title had I not played a single day of League of Legends. I
Mm.
think it still would have held up on that, even not having that current. Because again, Victor isn't even the main character. He's one of like the core. He's one of the main focuses, kind of. But like he was my favorite character out of all of them, and I honestly I've never felt more connected to a television show before. This was this was crazy good. And if you are a studio or if you're a showrunner or you're a filmmaker who is thinking about diving into something in the video game world for inspiration or just for a blatant remake of some kind, take notes.
Mm.
Absolutely take notes.
I agree.
You I cannot think of a better video game adaptation for somebody to refer to. This is setting the bar. This is where it's a high bar, but this is where it should be for future content like this.
Absolutely, because I was begging you to watch this, and I was not a League of Legends fan. I had never played the game. I had no connection to this. All I did was click on it. I had clicked on Arcane out of boredom, and it had just dropped. And I think one of the, the trailer that plays on Netflix as you're scrolling by, I was like, that looks. God. That looks interesting. I'll just do it, but I couldn't find anything else. And then I was just sucked in. And I think that's why it was great, because it, like you said, it has nothing to do with the game. It is definitely made to bring in people that have no idea what this is. But at the same time, I have yet to meet a League of Legends person that was pissed off about it. Like it was written for newcomers and fans alike, and that is rare. I mean, think of things like the World of Warcraft movie. That was so much. I mean, it looked cool at parts, but it was so deep up its own ass, up its own lore, that people couldn't get into it, and then it even irritated the fans of that, because they liked parts of it, but it wasn't faithful in other parts, and it was just so convoluted. There was no chance that a sequel was going to get made. And that's the case with a lot of these video games. It's either too faithful and too just for the players, or it dumbs it down so much that it pisses off anybody that liked the property to begin with. And so, Arcane, masterpiece. I could have taken your top 5 and had my top 5, but I thought that would make for a boring show. So none of your top 5, none of your top 5 to me is non-deserving. They are all deserving. I just wanted to include a couple other things. So I got a couple of yours in my top 5. I have Spider-Man, I have Justice League, I have Dune. I wanted to include 2 other titles.
I had a feeling Squid Game was going to end up in there.
Squid Game was fucking fantastic. It blew me away. It took the world by storm. I've said this before. I served in the military. I lived in Korea for a year. And every weekend I would go off base, and there was this little bootleg movie shop. And, we had a movie theater on base, but we didn't get movies for weeks to months after they debuted in the States. There was a theater in town, but it rarely played the movies I wanted to see in English, and I am fine watching foreign films, but I can't watch English films dubbed in other languages. It's just not the same. I'm sure it's the same for Italians watching it dubbed in English. They're like, that's not the voice of that actor. That's not the inflection of that actor. So I couldn't do that. So I would go to this this bootleg and be like, hey, this movie came out. I need the bootleg, and they would just, someone's camera version or better they would have on DVD. So I would I buy one American film, and then I would ask the guy, hey, I come in here a lot, give me a good Korean film to watch. And he just kept on feeding me just hit after hit. I mean, he got me into things like Old Boy and stuff like that coming out of that era. And I've been obsessed with Korean cinema ever since. And so when Squid Game came out, I saw the trailer. I thought it looked intriguing. It reminded me of classics like Battle Royale and Hunger Games, but with modern twists. And when I watched it, I just couldn't turn it off. It was fantastic. It is gripping, and just very well produced. And then just like I did with Arcane, I'm like, Maddie, sit down. We got to watch this again. And I loved it. And then of course, that came out in August or September. And by the time I was in New York for Comic-Con, there was Squid Game cosplay all over the place at New York Comic-Con. So very deserving. I loved it. Have you gotten around to seeing this yet? All right, I know the answer to that. Okay, I still suggest you see it. I know you're getting caught up. It's worth it. It's so worth it.
Me and Cece want to watch it together, but something else always keeps on like coming in, and I'm like, well, fuck, I gotta watch this now.
It's not 2020 anymore. There's gonna be a lot of stuff coming in, so you gotta like carve out the time. Or
well, so that's the thing. Like I'm gonna make sure that I'm absolutely caught up on new stuff.
What happened?
And then she and I are gonna take the time to like catch up on old stuff together, and so it's like, all right, we don't have to worry about grinding through it or anything like that. Like we just get to check it out. We're good. And I think Squid Game's the first on that list.
Well,
Squid Game, and then we were going to talk about watching Breaking Bad together.
Okay. Breaking Bad is that's right.
I got through the first season, but it was on in the background. And I was like, that's not fair. I need to go back and watch more of it. Watch the first couple episodes like dead on, and I was like, this is really good. Which I think is the expectation that everybody has. For somebody new who's watching it, if they were familiar with the show already. But yeah, Squid Game's on our list.
Well, you should do a reaction series.
I can't remember. Do I need to watch it dubbed or not dubbed?
It's up to your preference. So Netflix produced, I think, the dubbing.
Didn't you do both?
I did both. Yeah, because normally I will watch foreign film with subtitles because the dubbing is usually shit. However, and I've seen people say the opposite, but I've seen a lot of dubbing, and I normally can't stand it. The dubbing for this was pretty well done. There were some over-the-top performances, but I felt like they matched the over-the-top performances of the actual actors. So if, I feel like sometimes I've seen people that really don't like subtitles, but they just couldn't handle the dub. If you're someone that just doesn't like subtitles, I think you'll appreciate the work they did on the dub. They brought in pretty good voice actors, and I think they matched it up pretty well. However, either way, it's up to you, but just watch it. Find a way to watch it because it's great.
I'm an old man. I've got subtitles on everything. So,
well, we'll I think you should do a reaction series to Breaking Bad because that's kind of the thing now. All these YouTube is just soaked with reactors right now.
That's true.
And when they go back to things, to older properties, Breaking Bad is always on those lists of these new. One of the things that annoys me, though, and I was going to bring this up when we were talking about Spider-Man No Way Home has gotten a lot of these reactor channels to go back and start watching the Raimi and the Andrew Garfield Spider-Mans. And it is like, maybe I'm just turning into a cynical person, but I don't believe for 1 second that these people haven't seen these films. It's annoying the shit out of me because it's clearly just they see the new Spider-Man movie coming up, so let's watch Andrew Garfield's Amazing Spider-Man 2 and say we haven't seen it. But I
can understand not seeing Andrew Garfield's, but not seeing Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. Okay. Are you shitting me?
But when these people have like a wall of pop figures and nerdy stuff surrounding them, right. They're either fake nerds or they're lying to you. And here's the thing. I get it. It's a game. You're playing the game. But if you're going to do that, at least go back and scrub your previous content. Because, I love Amazing Spider-Man 2. And I was watching some genuine reactors. Like, you could tell they're not nerds in real life.
You love Amazing Spider-Man 2?
Yes, I love parts of Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Okay,
I feel not as the whole movie, but I feel like that movie is legit having some of the best Spider-Man moments on screen. I don't know what Jeffrey's talking about. Maybe he's talking about my commentary about YouTubers. But literally, I stumbled upon one. their entire backdrop was pop figures, nerd stuff, and they're like, we've never seen the Andrew Garfield films. Let's watch it. I literally just had to scroll in their previous videos, and I saw them talking about Andrew Garfield films 3 years ago. So, I mean, if you're going to lie, at least do a 5-second due diligence and take down your previous content so you don't look like an idiot. Because it comes
I've been
across
pretty consistent telling people, I was like, yeah, I haven't gotten past the first season of Breaking Bad.
Just don't lie.
I gotta be in the mood, man. I gotta be in the mood. The drama in the first few episodes is pretty heavy.
I know you haven't seen Breaking Bad. I'm just tired of these bad actors trying to act on YouTube. Anyway, getting back to this list, we've already talked about my last 3. Come On was something I checked out here in the fall.
I'm excited to hear about this. Looks like Joaquin Phoenix up there.
Yes, is Joaquin Phoenix. This film, I really was just like, I was working on my top 10 films of the year for Victims and Villains, and there was a lot of films that I had remembered seeing something about, and I was like, I want to see that, and I just hadn't seen it. So I spent like 3 weeks just like getting to watch these films instead of going down a YouTube rabbit hole for a couple hours and watching stupid shit. I would watch these films that were on my list that I hadn't gotten to yet, and this was one of them. And I didn't know anything about it. I had just seen the poster for it, and I'm like, all right, let's do it. And this movie made me cry. Like, this movie was legit. It's all about Joaquin Phoenix. He's a radio journalist. He's doing this series where he goes around with this crew, and they interview young kids in school about their lives, about how they've grown up, about their hopes for the future. And they're all from different walks of life, and it's really cool just to see this adult giving these kids attention that maybe they don't normally get, and treating their answers and giving them questions like they're worthy of the time that they're being given. And it's really cool to see that. Well, then his sister that he's kind of been estranged from needs somebody to look after her son while she goes and helps out her ex, and he feels for her, and despite her not thinking he can handle it, he agrees to look after her son. And her son is just this very creative, very energetic, very out there kid. And Joaquin Phoenix realizes that he might be good with interviewing strangers, but he's not good at actually taking care of a kid. And it's just this great, simple bottle film following these two, and I fell in love with their relationship. I felt like it was incredibly grounded. I felt for both characters, and I was literally crying at the end of the movie. I thought this was fantastic, and I had zero expectations for this film, and just the fact that it took me there, it had to be up here on this list. Again, I could have taken your top 5, but I wanted to inject some other ones in here, and this definitely did it for me.
Is it in black and white?
It is in black and white. And some of the shots and the shooting locations, I was just like, holy shit, this is gorgeous. I mean, there's like a scene where they're walking through this tree park, this like a arboretum or whatever you call like a tree park. Yeah, and there's just this giant overarching tree that they're walking under. And even though it's in black and white, it's just like this crisp, gorgeous natural shot. And I'm like, man, they didn't have to go that much with it, but they did. And yeah, it's just really good, man. I'm looking
at some of the stills that were taken. They're looking like these are clean.
Yeah, it's a gorgeous movie. It's very drama, but yeah, it blew me away. I would suggest it, Jeffrey. Not if you're trying to find a happy film. It's not a happy film. It's not like a sad film. Like, the kid doesn't, get hit by a car or anything. So I don't want you to think that it's gonna pull the rug out from you underneath you like that. Yeah,
he's definitely dead.
He's not dead. I'm swearing to God, he's not dead. They don't do that kind of stuff.
You said he didn't die. I was like, no, I said he didn't
wouldn't
get hit
do
by
that
a car.
I went specific like that. He doesn't die in the film. It's not that type of film, but it's really good. But you talked about some
have AIDS or something like that. like fuck.
Okay, so okay. I'm just gonna. I don't want to spoil it, but no, that's not what happens. you talked about some honorable mentions. I wanted to throw a couple more out there that didn't make the list, but again, like going back over 2021, I was amazed by how many films came out that I just associated with the previous year because this year's felt like it dragged on. For example, Quiet Place 2 came out this year. It was supposed to come out in March of 2020. It didn't come out till I think May of this year. And it was a hell of a good film. I really loved it. Wasn't going to make my top 5, but that doesn't mean it wasn't good. It's a really good film. And it came out this year. Totally forgot about that until
May 28th.
Yeah, so that came out this year. Excellent production. One more that I wanted to push.
Cillian Murphy's in it? Oh shit!
I thought you saw it.
Not quite.
Didn't you see this?
I saw the first one.
Oh, okay. I thought you went and saw the second one.
No, we went and we watched the first one. I still haven't seen the second one.
Okay,
we were gonna see it while we were down in Texas because it was still. We thought that it would still be running at that point, but we went and didn't make the time for it.
Okay.
On that one.
My other honorable mention, streaming related, is the 4th and final season of Hannah. This is a show that has always been on Amazon Prime. It's got this crazy lead actress, Esme Creed Miller, I believe is her name, or Miles, Esme Creed Miles. This was a movie that came out. It's based on a book. This is a movie that came out with Saoirse Ronan and Eric Bana way back a while ago. Saoirse, yeah, whatever her name is. She's great. It was an okay movie. It came out in 2011. Everybody was like, oh, this is kind of cool. And then the movie came out and it was kind of lackluster. This was kind of a gamble. And I think just somebody said, look, if you give the story time to breathe, it could be fantastic. And it really was. This is like spy shit, but with teenagers, also with adults. It's bloody. It's gory. It's really deep and dark. And this was the 4th season this year, and it killed it. And it's a finale that ended it. Fantastic. A lot of shows don't make it that far, and when they do, they can't nail the landing. This really did. So, fan-effing-tastic. Hannah, if you haven't checked it out, it's definitely worth the binge.
Every time I start something on Amazon, I'll get an ad, and a lot of the time it was for Hannah, and it's just like, I don't know. It's got John Malkovich in the first part of it, though, so it's like, maybe.
Well, and it had Joel Kinnaman in it, and I always like him. I'll watch anything with him, honestly, and it's just really good, man. It was really like it was a perfect example of a story that needed more time to breathe than a feature film would let it, and they took it there. So
I'll have to give it a run.
What does Jeffrey say? You mean this year, as in 2021? You got this. Yeah. Exactly. All right, let's move on.
2021 was a really long fucking decade, man.
You're right. It was. It felt so long. Let's move on to your worst, or as you put it, most disappointing.
Yeah. So
I see a pattern here. I see a 1, 2, 3, 4 pattern, which is crazy. It would make more sense with me since I have the DC background. They could just be like, "Oh, he's a Marvel hater," but goodness.
Yeah, and I'm sure I'm gonna catch some flack for some of these, but
I don't think so.
I'm gonna kick off with Red Notice. It just sucked.
It did. It so did.
It just sucked.
Everything. It was a commercial that went way too long.
Everything about it was super predictable, and I knew so at first I was just like, okay, this seems like it's just gonna be like, and I'm gonna talk spoilers about these because I don't give a fuck. You don't waste your time on Red Notice. At least if you want to watch the other ones, I'm still gonna talk spoilers, but fuck it. It's been plenty.
And I think we've talked spoilers about all of these properties, but certainly air your grievances again. I'm not going to add much to this conversation because I think I've talked myself to death. But go ahead.
Red Notice at first, so they go through the museum chase scene, and but they open it up with Dwayne Johnson showing up at this museum, and he's supposed to be playing a federal agent. I remember looking over at Cece while we were watching this movie, and I was just like, and I just whispered to her, I was like, I bet he's gonna be the bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
because he just had this. I don't know what it was. It was just like it was this villain aesthetic.
Oh, they over telegraphed it like crazy.
But like the first scene, I was like, I feel like he's gonna be the bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't look like a federal agent at all. He didn't look like he was undercover. He looked like a prick.
Didn't make sense that FBI would be operating in Italy. Like what?
No,
that's not what FBI does.
Zero sense. But it looked like it was gonna be a generic action movie. It was just like, okay. And then then Ryan Reynolds shows up to his fucking beach house hideout and he pours himself a glass of aviation gin. I was like, I was gonna show up somewhere. I was just like, all right, this is just an ad.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is just a commercial or something like that. Or this is like one of their paycheck movies or some shit.
Super long commercial.
Yeah. And just as the movie went along, it checked every single mark of every like predictable spy movie. It's like, it's like everybody betrays everybody. Everybody's always got some sort of secret backup plan that fucks the other person over, and then they're gonna have a monologue about it, or they're gonna be like this long drawn out thing where they think they're playing like the long con, and then you're gonna find out about it later. It was like every single time there was a scene or a location change. They were like, oh, something happened. It's like, yeah, I was planning that. Didn't tell you about it, bro. Sorry. I'm just like, and yeah, just the whole thing just kind of sucked. Gal Gadot's acting was really awkward in this. I was just like, this, like, it was really kind of disappointing. Dwayne Johnson just seemed like he was kind of mailing it in, and I've seen him do better, so I know he's capable of better. I know for a fact Ryan Reynolds is capable of doing better, but this was just another movie where he's just being Ryan Reynolds.
I mean, props to him for making a career on that, but everything is just it was just
a while though. Like, come on.
I know since Van Wilder. I mean, the only difference is now he's not Van Wilder; he's a version of Deadpool. Before Deadpool, it was just this is another Van Wilder. Now it's just another Deadpool. I wonder if we'll ever get a shift from him. You know, like every other actor has that defining moment where they take something that's definitely not in their wheelhouse and people praise them for it. I wonder if we'll ever get that from him, or if he's just going to ride this fourth wall Ryan Reynolds thing till he dies or retires.
I'm sure that he has dramatic chops, but like if he doesn't, if he doesn't enjoy that kind of work, I don't think we'll see him take any of it. But it would be cool to see him flex some other muscles.
Although I did like him in Free Guy. I'll give him that. That's not on any of my lists, but I thought Free Guy was pretty good.
Yeah, well, you
that also came out
in there with that one too. Like he knew what the fuck he was doing. I don't know who made Red Notice. I didn't pay attention to the crew because it's just I was just like, fuck this movie. Like, remember getting to the end of it? I was just like, holy fuck, that was boring.
Rawson Marshall Thurber. Never heard of him.
No fucking idea who that is.
Okay.
I don't care to learn, honestly. That one, Red Notice fucking sucked. Red Notice, however, is the only one on this list where I thought it deserved worst title.
Okay.
The rest of these four were all disappointing. So
okay.
They all had their own merits, but like they stood out to me on this list specifically because there were so many things that were disappointing about them.
You didn't miss much, Jeffrey.
Yeah, you didn't miss shit. Black Widow should not have been made. Like the time had passed for them to make Black Widow. They should have made it like right around. They should have made it before the first Avengers movie or directly after.
Like well, you know why.
Directly after.
It's fairly well documented that Disney's leadership did not believe in a female-driven movie.
Yeah, we know why. But you can't turn back the clock at that point, and this was actually kind of insulting. And it was like,
so much.
Yeah, we're gonna close this out with a character that we aren't concerned about anymore because we know what her fate is. Like we're gonna devote Black Widow's movie to passing the torch. And so Black Widow's movie is not actually about Scarlett Johansson. It's really more about like passing the torch to her family or giving us a reason to be okay with her being killed off in Endgame, which I'm still not super stoked about. I wasn't stoked about it at the time, but this movie was just them trying to like hammer it in. I was like, this is why she did it. Hawkeye did a better job of giving Scarlett Johansson's character justice than this fucking movie did.
That's true. That's so true.
And and that was really upsetting. And so that was why it ended up on my disappointing list.
I thought,
I still think Scarlett did a good job with it. I liked David Harbour's character in it. I thought he was having a lot of fun, and of course Florence Pugh is like
oh yeah,
excellent. She's a great Yelena Belova. I mean,
she
she's
is.
the only on-screen adaptation that we've seen of her so far, but she's doing a great job. She's fucking adorable, playing like the sassy little sister.
Yeah.
Um, and she's honestly like I'm really excited to see that she's going to be a part of the MCU for future projects, and have gotten to see her again in Hawkeye as well. But this movie was just I felt like this was just a really sour way of bringing them into the franchise, and I like
I mean, it helped her character's depth in Hawkeye,
yeah,
but I think, and I
which
think
again makes me think like this movie was for her. It wasn't
it
for
was. It
Scarlett's.
definitely was for her. It was too late to be a Black Widow movie. It was going to be a handoff film, but if you're going to do a handoff film, make it a good film. There were so many things that I think people theorize that this movie could have been about. I mean, what happened in Budapest? We were told, not shown. This could have been a pass off movie while being a hard hitting Black Widow clearing her ledger movie, and that's not what it was. It was so over the top. It was so ridiculous. It was so, how the hell is she not dead in every single scene? She's not super powered. She might have been sleeping with the Hulk, but she didn't have the Hulk powers. So how she could just fall off the side of the building and survive, I don't know. But there was so many dumb moments in that, and I really,
I
yeah,
know
I agree.
the line
Service to the character.
the line that crossed it for me was making it so she couldn't kill the main villain because he smelled.
Oh my gosh,
It's
stupid
like
stuff like that.
it's like, oh, I've got
That's
pheromones
not
that mean that you can't
entertaining.
kill me. And be like, what? No.
It's not entertaining. It's not intimidating. And holy shit, what I mean, the MCU has had some bad, forgettable villains in the past, but this is so far past that. The
Oh,
villain was boring as hell. I mean,
oh,
no
and then
one
they shit
cares.
all over Taskmaster, which was
Oh
like the
yeah, that
biggest
was
offense
just
they could have done.
I thought they've
Taskmaster,
learned by now, but no, that was
like
egregious.
when you like read up some comics on Taskmaster, he is a fucking terrifying villain. Like he's basically you fighting yourself, and you are your own, like you are your strongest opponent, and this guy knows everything about what you're gonna do, and everything about like every fighter that he watches for a certain period of time. It's like he's a perfect mimic. They described the character perfectly in the film. They they portrayed them. They portrayed him. Taskmaster's a male in the comics, but in this, it's Dracov's daughter, who was
Mm.
supposedly why Budapest was such a nightmare. Um, so they retconned that as well. It was like, oh, so Budapest really shouldn't have been that big of a fucking deal then, huh? Like,
Yeah, so you just hung out in the ductworks of a subway for a couple of days.
yeah,
That was the terrible
just
Budapest story. Oh my gosh.
horrible dick move.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it was not the last of the Marvel disappointments for this year. Um, again, I know I'm going to catch some shit for this, especially for Shang-Chi, but we're not there yet. I got to talk Eternals. Eternals, again, not worst movies, but just disappointing.
Uh,
There were a lot of good things about the movie. A lot of good things about the movie. But that's also the bad thing, is that it's a movie. It was like in a world where they were focusing so much on getting characters shows, the piece of content that would have benefited from a show the most ended up getting a movie. I can't. It's like there's a piece of commentary from a Super Bowl a few years ago, and the only reason I remember this is because I had to watch it. It was the Seahawks versus the Patriots, and they made a fucking terrible play call at the end of the game. I can't remember what it was, but they tried passing and the Patriots intercepted it. And one of the commentators was like you've like they were like a yard away from having a touchdown and winning the game. And the commentator's like, I can't believe the call. I can't believe the call. That ringed in my head when I
mm.
finished watching Eternals, and it was a movie and not a show. It was just like, I can't believe that call, Kevin Feige. I can't believe the call. It was like, if anything would have benefited from having a show that ran for 8 episodes, 8 1-hour episodes, it would have been a show with fucking 10 main characters.
Mm-hmm.
Like, are you fucking shitting me right now? And then they,
hell, I'd even take their 6 formula versus the
6
stuff they
1-hour
tried to
episodes.
jam pack in this film. They
Like,
sold this film.
Follow the exact same plot lines.
Yeah.
Do it over 6
Give it
episodes.
some time to
of show.
breathe.
Yeah, give us some time to actually learn to care about these characters. It's like I said, they had great elements to this. They strayed pretty far from the original Eternals comic.
Yeah, a lot.
Versions of these characters. But they did a good job of establishing who these characters would be. They just didn't give us enough time to grow with any of them because there's so fucking many of them. And then, so you've got, like I said, they've got redeeming qualities for every single character. Like, I didn't hate any of the Eternals. Like, I thought that the character decisions that they made would have been good if we'd had more time to grow with them and more time to actually attach to these characters.
Yeah.
And then the main villain, the main deviant, whose name I can't even remember at this point because I'm fucking flustered at the moment. But they also did a terrible job of establishing that villain. It's like, if we have learned anything from the Marvel films, and there is a lot, is that the best ones were always the one that had the most compelling villain.
Yes.
This strayed from that formula so far. So did Black Widow. It fell super flat for me by the time we got to the end of it. It's like the scariest part of the deviants is like, oh my god, these creatures that have been sent to this planet for population control. These 2 species that have basically been sent to the planet for population control. One of them is evolved out of being a mindless killing machine and is now absorbing fucking superpowers off of these celestially created beings. Oh, he absorbed the one that can he absorbed the power to regenerate himself, and then he absorbed the power to be the fucking one of the strongest fighters. And then the one that's having an existential memory crisis is the one that kills him, and they kill him off like right away.
Super easy.
No struggle whatsoever. There wasn't even a dialogue. He had learned to talk. Like, he'd learned to communicate, and we didn't get a conversation about it. Like, honestly, it made zero sense that the Deviant didn't help them out because the Celestials were going to kill all them too. Be like, really?
Yeah.
If anything, this Deviant, much like the Eternals, had been manipulated for its entire life for a purpose that wasn't its own.
Yes.
Like, if you want to make a movie about characters gaining their own free will and like going against their fate, the Deviants should not have been fucking killed. But that's in this particular iteration. That's how you would have fixed this movie.
Sure.
Make it a show and don't kill off the deviant villain the way that you did. Like, if
They
you're gonna kill him off, they would have had to do it a different way. They fucked it up.
They sold this movie so much on being different than the rest of the MCU. This movie is not going to follow our normal formula. It's gonna be a departure from the MCU. It's gonna be a Marvel film, but it's not gonna feel like an MCU film. Here's the problem with that. We have Marvel films that aren't MCU films. They come from Sony. They came from Fox. And majority of the time, they sucked. Why did they suck? Because they didn't have the MCU formula. So if you're going to bring in a director like they did here, and you're going to hype this up as something new and something different, don't forget to make a good story out of it. Because you can get a different cinematographer and a different director and hella different actors than you would normally see caliber-wise and inclusive-wise. This film had great diversity. It was probably the most diverse movie made in a long time. There was like representation all over the place. Hell of a good cast. Terrible fucking movie. And it was because they tried way too hard to be different, and it fell so flat. I mean, Ant-Man got a sequel. Every MCU film gets a sequel. I cannot see this property getting greenlit for a sequel. I can see elements of it being sprinkled into other sequels, but if we get an Eternals 2, they're going to have to do some major Thor Ragnarok level switch ups to make this something that, because this lost them money.
They killed off a bunch of them, so it was like maybe now
Right.
they could make a movie of the same runtime and only focus on a few of them. It's like, yeah,
And you can throw every single member from One Direction into this film. It's not going to make it better. And
Yeah.
and CGI Patton Oswalt looked terrible. Okay.
Oh my
the
god!
choices.
Like the CGI was so good throughout the movie, and then
we get
they
something that
throw it
feels
away
like
at the
it's
end.
20 years old. Like, what is this? I seriously felt like it was something that wasn't finished rendering.
That's
so
gonna
bad.
Get more touch-ups. Like when we see the digital release or like any
I'm sure.
like at home release, that's absolutely going to have been fixed.
It was bad. It was shockingly bad. But sorry, continue on.
Bad. I mean that basically sums it up.
We got two more on here.
Well, in the order here, again, there's no order here. I'm just kind of following it. Like it wasn't like Red Notice was easily the worst, but Hawkeye, I've kind of gone back a little bit on my disappointments here. I think the reason that this was disappointing to me is because it really didn't feel like they were passing the torch quite as much in this season as they were trying to give us almost a little too much fan service, specifically around, and again, spoiler alert, and I'm really going to drop it here because Hawkeye's pretty recent, but I'm going to talk full spoilers here. So if you haven't seen Hawkeye, I still recommend watching it. I still think that it is a reasonable thing to check out in the MCU, and it does have some. It has some pretty big implications for what's going to go on. And here's the spoiler part. It's got some major implications if you are a fan of Netflix's Daredevil, because we got Vincent D'Onofrio back. And they were telegraphing it through the entire series, and then they shit all over him at the end. And I was just like, I was fucking pissed. And I was just like, I understand if you're going for comic book accuracy, because they made him freakishly strong, like he is in the comics. We saw hints of that in Daredevil, but not quite to this degree. Like, it was a massive jump, which if they're going the direction that they think they're going based off of the other shows, I'm going to have a feeling that he probably got a hold of some strength serum, some super soldier serum, because specifically around the character of Patriot from Falcon and Winter Soldier, he has some tie-ins with a serum that's regularly available to him to a problematic degree. The way that they handled him was super weird, and this one kind of fell into sort of the same thing, you know, like we've seen plenty of Marvel content where if the main villain is not compelling, it falls flat. And the main villain in this movie, or in this show, as they were portraying her, was Alaqua Cox. It was Echo, and she ended up not being the villain very quickly. And she wasn't really a compelling villain, honestly. She was a person who was out for revenge. Didn't really see her doing anything evil. Like, she was the head of the Tracksuit Mafia, which sounds like the most adorable mafia on the fucking planet. And so, like, there really was, and we really didn't see them do much of anything evil except blow up an auction and, like, a little bit of, like, it was mafia. It was like diet mafia. So she didn't strike me as a compelling villain. And then the entire time, like, if you're going to make the main baddie somebody who is worried about the real big baddie, you cannot have the main big baddie lose at the end of that series. Like, and especially if they're making it seem like this character is going to come back, because he's definitely not dead. No. He's definitely not dead. He's going to come back. He's probably going to be blinded, like he was in the comic book, from a very similar event, temporarily, obviously, but like, it's just it was such a weird throw in. It almost felt like they weren't planning on it originally, and they're like, all right, well, like, somebody came in like halfway through the series being made, and they're like, okay, I feel like we're going to do this, and then they did it, and it was like, oh, what the fuck, like, now it's just a mess. And so that was what the show felt like. It felt like a mess by the end of it. Although I really liked Jeremy Renner and Haley Steinfeld's chemistry. I really appreciated that, especially around, I love that they included Hawkeye's hearing loss, and they did it in really good fashion. Like, there was actually some great moments there. I really liked Haley Steinfeld. I think she did a great job in the role. I didn't find her annoying or anything like that. Like the times where I found her annoying, you were supposed to find her annoying. And then her chemistry with Yelena Belova. I'm so glad that Florence Pugh got to come back for this series, even though we knew that she was going to. It was like she did a great job. She stole the show for me. Like again, like she stole the show in Black Widow. She stole the show in this. Um, but that's also why it was the most disappointing for me, is that a character who was making just a little bit more than a cameo ended up being my favorite part of it. And then that sucked. So that's really why this ended up on my most disappointing, because I had higher expectations for this, and I got let down harder. So that's why it ended up on most disappointing.
Well, yeah, I've said all my piece. I don't want to repeat myself on this, but I agree with everything you just said. I love the Daredevil series. When we saw Matt Murdock in Spider-Man, I was like,
we saw him in Spider-Man.
I was like, that is Matt Murdock. That is Daredevil. Even though all he did was catch a brick and say a couple lines of law, it was like, that is Daredevil. When we saw Vincent D'Onofrio, it was, that is Vincent D'Onofrio playing a version of Kingpin. And yes, I know the Hawaiian shirt is from the comics. That's fine. But when you put him in it, when you dress him up like that, and then you surround him by a bunch of idiots, it does not ring as the same intimidating, has no time for fuck ups Kingpin that was in Daredevil. If you fucked up in Daredevil, he killed you. He did not have time for your ridiculous. He had you killed. He shed people because they were dead weight in that show. And now you're trying to tell me that he runs the tracksuit mafia, a bunch of bros that can't get their shit together for the whole series and just makes a mess of everything, and he's their boss? He doesn't make any sense.
To say is like, we need to remind people that this city belongs to me. And it's like, not with the tracksuit mafia. You're not going to.
Yeah, what the? That would never fly with the other version of him.
He went from dealing with like a member of the Hand, a couple of them, like fucking like these like deep criminal underworld people, like they were doing like, slave labor and sex trade and all that shit, to like a bunch of corporate espionage, like really like high up political level stuff.
Yeah.
To
Fat Man's Auto Car and Tracksuit Mafia. He went from living in the flats overlooking the city with giant paintings on the wall that reminded him of the trauma of his childhood to operating out of some weird little hideout with beads on the doors. I mean, what the hell? This was not...
And then
I love Vincent D'Onofrio. If they're going to continue him on, someone's got to be like, okay, I know we can't do the R-rated Netflix Daredevil, but we gotta...
You sure as shit
we gotta bring him back to the intimidating level. Because, yeah, watching him throw Haley Steinfeld around a room was like, okay, he means some business. But when you thought about his character as a whole, in the context of this show, it was like, this is like Walmart version Kingpin. It is not Kingpin. So, yeah, I was disappointed, but continue on.
Well, my last one on the list was actually the least disappointing out of what I saw out of this list. But it was still a letdown in a couple of ways. First of all, I do want to say that this is the best hand-to-hand combat that I have seen in the MCU, aside from Winter Soldier's fight. The cinematography around shooting the action scenes and the kung fu in this movie was excellent. They did a great job. Fucking hate Awkwafina's character. Couldn't stand her. I couldn't do it. I could not do it. I couldn't get around the voice. I couldn't get around the acting. Like, just like I remember rewatching it and just having like, there was a scene very early on in the movie. Her little brother was just like, oh, your job parking cars is super tough. And she just has this line, it's like, thanks, bro. You made me work hard. You get to live the dream like me someday. And it felt like I was watching like a fucking bad acting 90s television show. Like it was just weird. And then like the theme that I've been going with, where if you don't have a compelling villain, the show ends up not being very good. That wasn't the case here, because the villain actually was great. I thought his character, and I thought the actor crushed the Mandarin or Wenwu. But um, the problem with it, with the movie that I actually had, is that we had a compelling villain who actually turned the character. Like Shang-Chi was going through, they played it off like this movie was going to be like this, all right, I'm struggling with what to do with my adult life, what direction I'm going to go in, like, am I going to have this romantic interest with my best friend, all that stuff. And we didn't get any of that resolved. And people will argue with me on that one, but he's going through all this. He doesn't know what to do. He wants to decide what to do with his life. The only real major decision that Shang-Chi actually has to make and comes to is, I'm going to kill my father. And instead of deciding not to, the opportunity gets taken from him. Something else kills his father for him. They don't really have a moment of clarity. Like, so his death is not tragic. Like, you're still kind of not on his side at that point. Shang-Chi had like come to grips with it. He'd be like, I'm going to kill my father. Like, this is what it's going to be. And you're like, well, fuck. Like, that's dark. I hope that he comes away from that. He doesn't. Like, if he had been given if he had not had the chance taken away from him, I feel like he would have finished the job. That was how I felt. It was like, that's not the message that you want to send for a hero. It was like, you wanted him to be better than that. And he really didn't get that moment. Like, they tried to make it seem like that was the case, but it fell short. And then I'll praise the fucking hand-to-hand fighting, left and right, for the first 2/3 of the movie. But by the time you get to the very ending, they just kind of threw it away for a CGI fuckfest. And it's like, well, like, honestly, the way that I would have fixed it is that his father loses access to the 10 rings somehow. Like they disobey him, they decide not to. And so he has to fight his son hand to hand. His son, like, Shang-Chi does not get a hold of the rings either. It's like they really have to fight it out, and it gets brutal. And it comes to a point where Shang-Chi is getting the upper hand finally, but he's given into that anger, and then he has to see that, and then his father also sees what he has done. Like, he created this monster. This is what he did, and they kind of get to come to grips with that at some point. And that is the moment, they're finally about to reconcile this situation, and then that's the moment where that Soul Eater gets a hold of Wenwu, and Shang-Chi tries to save him at that point using the 10 rings. And it's important that he tries to save him using the 10 rings, because if he tried to save him and failed without them, it would have made it, and then gets a hold of the 10 rings and kills the Soul Eater, it would have made it seem like he needed those 10 rings to be a hero. His hero moment would have had to have come from him trying to save his father with the 10 rings, and failing to save his father, but successfully saving the city. Or even given his father the opportunity to actually, like, make a sacrifice towards it. Because, like, his father had reconciled with the fact that he was going to kill Shang-Chi as well. You're not going to get in the way of me saving my wife. I was like, no. Like, that would have been the saving grace for me, but they fucked it. And it was really disappointing for me. They had me on board for the most part throughout the first 2/3 of the movie, and then fucking Ben Kingsley's character showed up and turned into, like, a horrible comic relief, but also a good comic relief at the same time.
I loved his Planet of the Apes. His Planet of the Apes joke.
His Planet of the Apes joke was fucking
fantastic.
Great. It was hilarious. But I couldn't figure out where to land there. And then they throw Wong into the movie in this super weird fucking way. They bring Abomination back, and it's like, okay, well, what's going on there? Is Blonsky in a fucking show? Are we gonna see Tim Roth in a future iteration of these, in a future part of these films?
He looked bad.
He looked weird.
Redesign was just weird.
Well, he looked more comic accurate, but
it doesn't mean it was good.
No, it doesn't mean it was good.
Not everything from the comics transfers well to screen, guys.
And then they have Wong show up at the end for another end credit scene, And then we have fucking Banner show up, not as Hulk anymore. It was like I had more questions and more intrigue about what was going to happen next based off of the end credit scene than I did the whole fucking movie. So that was why
that's never a
it
good
was
sign.
disappointing to me. I know I said that this was the least disappointing on the list for me, and I'm getting pretty fired up, but that was how it landed. I hold the Marvel films to a very high standard. It was like I'm coming from a comic book history. I've been watching the movies since Iron Man 2008. Like I've got a strong connection to this franchise, and I'm not gonna be I'm a Marvel fanboy, but like that makes our role like if you're a Marvel fanboy, that makes our role and our criticism that much more important. Like you can't give them a break. You have to hold them up to that high standard that you're expecting them to be at. And if they fuck it up, you need to rub their face in it because if Marvel has proven anything is that they do listen to their fans. They do pay attention to that stuff. And it was like they paid attention to it with Thor. The first movie came out. The second movie, you could tell that they tried a little bit harder but failed harder in the process. And then they were like, you know what? We got to fix this shit. We got to revamp it. It's not going to work this way if we keep going. And then we get the fucking gloriousness that was Thor Ragnarok. And it was like, of course. And then they took the Russo brothers, who developed probably one of, if not the best non-Avengers movie out of the bunch with Falcon and the Winter Soldier, brought them back for Civil War, brought them back for Infinity War, brought them back for Endgame. It was like, you goddamn right, because you found the formula that worked the best. You brought them back in. That makes sense. Maybe they need to be higher up in the creative directing. Maybe they don't want that role because they don't want to focus on just Marvel projects. I know they have other stuff going. But yeah, if you're a Marvel fanboy, which I will say I'm absolutely a Marvel fanboy, your standards need to be kept high even when they fall short. It was like, because if they fall short, that's when you need to be the loudest. And it was like you can't sweep anything under the rug when that happens.
I share a lot of your critiques. I think although I really liked Awkwafina in the movie, I liked that they clearly could have made her a love interest, and it might still go that way, but it certainly wasn't they kiss at the end, you know. I hate that they turned her into all of a sudden the most they turned her into Hawkeye by the end of it. I mean, she spent 5 minutes at a range, and then suddenly she was able to do the killing blow to this giant soul eater. And then, I mean, unless it was a magical arrow, I don't understand how it got that big or how it got that far. But all of a sudden, she was like master Katniss of the MCU. And then by the end of it, you had Wong saying, "I need both of you to come with me." Okay, here's the thing: I wouldn't want Awkwafina to be a useless side character either, but you don't have to make her a superhero to make her relevant. You could have easily had her like in the shit with the rest of the village, doing something courageous, protecting people, while not making her the master archer that none of the other villagers apparently could be. And again, at the end, when Wong shows up, Wong says, "You have the 10 rings. You need to come with me." And Shang-Chi stands up and says, "Hey, she's my friend. I need her for support." And he goes, "Whatever, bring her as well." You don't have to be like, "You guys are both Avengers now." You know, I do like your idea of the Mandarin losing his 10 rings and that bringing another epic fight scene to the third act. Because yes, the first 2 acts had epic choreography, but then it went to what's that Jet Li, Jason Statham movie? The One. Everybody was like, "Oh my gosh, Jason Statham."
Jason Statham was in One?
Yeah, Jason Statham going up against Jet Li in The One, but it was so CGI infused, nobody liked it because it took out most of the awesome choreography fights that you're used to from those films. And the same thing happened here. It had great fight scenes in the beginning, but then once all the CGI nastiness came in, it just he was in The One as well. Look up The One. He was in The One.
No way. Oh my God. Yeah, he was. Okay.
I'm not lying. He had a bigger part in War because that was the fallout of The One. They were like, all right, let's give them a movie that's not about superpowers, but then war ended up sucking. But
the one sucked really bad too. But.
Going back to Shang-Chi though, I just don't understand. Marvel does so many things right, but they keep doing the same thing wrong. If you're gonna give us a compelling villain like this, don't kill him off in the first movie. Like, imagine if you did that with your heroes. Imagine if you watched the entirety of Iron Man 1 and at the end, Iron Man makes a sacrifice and dies. It would be a waste. You've, you know, and then if you're going to have someone like the Mandarin and tell us that he was this massive bad guy behind the scenes for centuries, it doesn't give weight to his character if you kill him off in the same film.
Nope.
Take away his powers. Let him be like, I'm going to go back to my roots and be the villain that people feared me, even if I don't have the 10 rings. And then Shang-Chi has something that he unfortunately has to look forward to in the future, facing his father again. Don't give us this compelling villain with an incredible actor and then kill him off in a CGI ridiculous fest at the end of it. It was, I agree, it was very disappointing. There was a lot of great things in it, but I love Shang-Chi, but I think the dragons were so unnecessary. The third act just didn't land. I agree. It felt like a totally different movie. I mean, you can have fantastic elements, but
like he really got thrusted into the mythical side of things, and it would have made a lot more sense if they had saved that for a sequel and gotten us a taste of the mythicality that he could have been connected to.
Yeah.
Honestly, I thought it would have been a lot better if they had kind of like made Kunlun more of the pull.
Well, that was the thing.
They familiar with that
by putting in Aquafina, then the sister got put off to the side. This could have been I mean, again, I really did like Aquafina in the movie, but if her character hadn't been here, this could have been a brother-sister film against their father, and she would have got so much more spotlight, And then we wouldn't be like,
the sister
exactly.
Did a great job.
She could fight, It wasn't like all of a sudden she's like the best archer in the world. Anyway, can I talk to you about my worst?
Let's jump right in there, man. We gotta
move
on. We're almost at 2 hours already.
I know. These are my worst, not my disappointments, my worst of the year. Okay. I'm not going to talk in depth about all of them because they just don't need it. Space Jam is easy. Like, I could have thought of other films that make this list, like the new Resident Evil film or other things. Space Jam just does not even deserve to be a movie. It was a failed ad campaign for HBO Max's movie catalog, and by the time it was over, it was like, all right, burn it with fire. Don't ever bring it up again. LeBron, I thought people thought that he could act in a couple other movies, but make him the lead and surround him by cartoon characters. Nah, it was terrible. It was a stupid fucking movie. It was just dumb. It was so dumb.
I couldn't bring myself to watch it.
I know Space Jam isn't that great either, the original Space Jam, but I loved it as a kid. I used to watch that shit on repeat. But nostalgia doesn't hide the fact that it was not that great of a movie. But it was a pretty competent film. Had they made a sequel maybe within 10 years of that, or even when Kobe was around, because Kobe was for a long time the next Michael Jordan, that might have made more sense. This wasn't a sequel to Space Jam. This was literally a commercial for HBO Max, and it fell flat because everybody saw it as that, and no one gave a shit. It was just, how much shit can we cram in? How much fourth wall? How much advertising and poor if you're going to have people in the background looking like characters, at least get them some good costumes. There are cosplayers at Midwest Comic-Cons that pay $10 to put their costumes together that look better than some of the people in this movie. It was terrible. It's a waste of time. I don't want to talk about it anymore. Do you have any notes about Space Jam?
No, I couldn't watch it, so I didn't. Seeing the trailers, I was just like, this just doesn't look good. I think in a trailer reaction, I was just like, it looks like this movie. I can't remember what I said exactly, but I remember having the thought. I was like, I feel like this movie is just going to be full of stuff where people are going to be like, oh, look, I spotted that. Saw that character I recognized because they had the trailer where it was like a bunch of Warner Brothers properties. And honestly, it seemed like it was going to be like Ready Player One all over again. It was just a bunch of callbacks. It's like you can toy with nostalgia to a certain degree. And I've got a movie in my surprises that does that and does it right. Even though they borderline it a little bit. But I just didn't have any faith that this was going to do it. And neither did Mortal Kombat. That was the next one on my list. That was the next one that I didn't watch because it's like, you haven't done a good job with any Mortal Kombat movie. I have zero faith that they can. But I didn't watch this one either. So
Mortal
I'm curious
Kombat.
to know how you felt.
Mortal Kombat as an IP property, it has a legacy, man. The games,
it really does.
the games were covered in controversy and celebrated for their amazingness. The original games, just changed the future landscape of fighting games. They were incredible. When they tried to do the movies, they didn't work. Now at least the first film may hold some nostalgia in the hearts of old school fans, as it should, but I think everybody knows it wasn't great. The sequel to that was terrible. Well, in the last decade, Mortal Kombat has had this kind of renaissance. The games have been coming back. They've done like crossover. They've brought characters almost like Super Smash Brothers would bring other legendary characters from the Nintendo universe into Super Smash Brothers. The Mortal Kombat games started doing that, bringing things from the DC universe, bringing things from horror movies, like Jason and stuff like that, bringing all these things like the Predator, Arnold Schwarzenegger's The Terminator into these games, and really just going back to their roots of having epic kills. Like that was all they needed to do to show off these games was the kills. They even had a couple really good animated films.
Such a meme, man.
Fatality it's iconic because of this property. The animated films. There's at least one that came out recently. I think two in the last 2 or 3 years. Excellent animated films. So you have all of that. Plus you had, I think, this YouTube Red series that was very small budget, but had a lot of cool things in it. They really worked hard they threw in some TV actors that really upped the level a bit. And all of these things were gearing up for a return to the big screen. Then Mortal Kombat came out and they went hard on the advertising, showing you some of the fatalities. We go crazy bloody in the games. We're going to go crazy bloody in the movie. Well, then the movie came out, and as most of us feared, while they did have fatalities, one, they showed almost every fatality in the trailer, and two, they forgot to put Mortal Kombat in the Mortal Kombat movie. There was no Mortal Kombat competition in the whole movie. Was about getting ready for Mortal Kombat. Then it ended. There was no Mortal Kombat. There was fighting, and there was stupid actors, and there was bad CGI, and there was every fatality you saw in the trailer. And then it was over. It was a waste of time. It was bad. It was so bad. And I'm not even like that invested in the property, but I wanted to give it a chance because everything they've put out in the last 10 years felt like they were going in a better direction. But then they were just like, nah, let's let go of all that and just do a shitty movie and call it Mortal Kombat. That's what we got. Terrible. Don't waste your time.
That's disappointing.
Seth, is there a way to turn up your mic? I can hear you. Jeffrey might not. It might just be because I'm screaming into my mic, Jeffrey.
I was also leaning back quite a ways. I can move up a little bit more.
I'm going to save the middle.
Before we jump into the Matrix,
we're not jumping into the Matrix next, but go ahead.
Well, I'm going to say go ahead and jump into the Matrix next because I have to go to the bathroom, and I still want to see this, so I don't want to hear anything that's going to mess it up because I haven't seen it yet.
God damn it.
So I'm going to let, I know, I'm sorry. I'm going to let you rant at the audience on this one real quick, and
Fine.
I'm going to kind of like slowly sneak my way back in here.
Fine. I'll rant
I can tell you got some strong feelings about it, and I don't want you to be cheated out of give them away on this one.
I'll rant to Jeff or Brent or whoever might be listening. The Matrix Resurrections seems to be divided. Some people seem to love this film. I did not love it. It's a fourth film in a sci-fi series with the name Resurrections in the title, just like Alien Resurrection. The movie sucked. It was bad. Look, some people are like, no, it was like a commentary. Listen, I understand there's commentary in this movie about how sequels suck, but you can't be a sequel and say that sequels suck and then also suck. That doesn't make you better. It just makes you part of the problem. Now, there's a whole thing about whether Lana Wachowski was forced to do this. There's like a commentary about how, the WB was going to make this film, whether or not the Wachowskis made it or not. Well, the other Wachowski sister didn't want to make it, so Lana made it. I don't know if she made it with passion to try to make a good film or if she just made it out of spite. Either way, it sucked. And I'm sorry. I really liked Matrix 1 and I liked parts of the sequels, but I know they have issues. Maybe the WB bringing somebody else in to make a new Matrix movie, maybe that would have given the life that this franchise needed, because Lana dropped the ball. It was a shitty film, way too meta. This dude is not Morpheus. The dude that plays Agent whatever is not Agent whatever. It's a terrible film. Did not like it. Seth, you can put your headphones back on. You're safe.
I saw the sign.
I could talk about this film forever, so you need to watch it so that we can have a proper discussion, because I fucking hate this film. It's a travesty.
So Cece hadn't seen the third Matrix yet. She had seen the first two.
Mm-hmm.
The first one, she was kind of into it. It was compelling on a sci-fi basis. But the second one, she wasn't super stoked about it, and so she held off on it. She rewatched the trilogy recently so we could watch The Matrix together. She just finished the third one like 2 days ago.
Okay.
So
you need to watch this, and we need to do a late review on it, because we've given Spider-Man a lot of time, and this came out around the same time. But it is not a case of it got shadowed by Spider-Man. In my, and if you have a different opinion,
if anything, we gave Spider-Man the least amount of time out of anything.
Oh, I know, but if you
a few days later,
if you end up liking it, I would love to hear your opinion. I freaking hated it, and I need to tear it apart. So let's do a. I know we're looking at doing some different things in the new year, but let's at least do a review, me and you, for that, because I need to rant.
I'm on board.
A bathroom break for Seth is not enough time for me to rant. Okay, moving on.
Dude, it was killer, man. I've been drinking a lot of water. It was like 48 ounces, and this is almost empty.
I needed to throw something. I needed to throw something from TV in here, and it is definitely Invasion.
I will say I'm surprised that it was Apple TV, because you were like singing the praises of Apple TV to me, and then and then the first mention that you make of something specific from it is fucking on your worst list this year.
It is, because here's the thing. And I'm going to bring this up so that there's another image on screen for this. I've been on this kick of watching Apple stuff. I've watched a lot of stuff on Amazon. I've watched a lot of stuff on Netflix, Disney Plus, HBO. But then I was watching a couple things from Apple. Defending Jacob with Chris Evans. Oh my God, really good. The Morning Show with Jennifer Aniston and a few other folks. Oh my gosh, really good. Okay, what else do they have? Started watching Foundations. Holy shit, really good. Started watching For All Mankind. One of the best sci-fi series of all time is For All Mankind. I'm obsessed with that show. Third season can't come out fast enough. Holy shit. It's written by Ronald D. Moore, who did a lot of TNG, Star Trek, did Battlestar Galactica reboot, worked on Outlander. This is like his masterclass in sci-fi. So then Invasion was announced as another sci-fi miniseries from Apple TV. Yeah, I agree, Jeffrey. Defending Jacob was fucking amazing. It was great. It's got Sam Neill in it. It's got this great cast.
I was like, is that fucking Sam Neill? Like,
yeah, that's like Sam Neill.
Like,
and he's
facial hair in that degree.
So here's the thing. He's in the first episode. That's it. And they sold this show on his character a lot. The first episode is compelling.
Couldn't pay him enough to stick around.
I guess not. The first episode is compelling as shit. This is a very much it's not a remake, but it's very much in the vein of War of the Worlds, where it's a very quiet invasion, and his character stumbles on things like things in the cornfield, shapes in the cornfield and stuff going on, and he's like, what's up, and I'm like, oh my god, this is intriguing as shit. Then he dies, and the rest of the show is just boring and stupid, and it does the same thing of what a lot of modern sci-fi shows do. For example, the BBC's recent remake of War of the Worlds. It follows so many different stories, and each story gets like 5-10 minutes each episode, and none of it ever goes anywhere. By the time you do see the aliens, they are these stupid CGI blobs that are literally like no form. They're not intimidating. The story then wraps up at the end and it's done. And I'm like, who the fuck wrote this? It's the most stupid shit I've ever seen. And it's just so bad. Who wrote this? And I look it up, and it's fucking Simon Kinberg that wrote this. How the hell he keeps getting jobs, I don't know. But this is the guy that wrote X-Men The Last Stand, which for a long time was considered to be the fucking worst film. Then he came back and did X-Men Apocalypse, which was then considered to be the worst X-Men film. Then he came back and did X-Men Dark Phoenix, which was a remake of his first Phoenix film, which was now considered the worst X-Men film. He's got a movie coming out this month called The 355 that I guarantee you is going to be the first bomb and probably the biggest bomb of the year. He is a horrible, horrible writer, and this show,
producer apparently.
This show is so fucking bad. It's so bad. Don't waste your time. I hated it. I fucking hated it.
I'm looking at his IMDb page here, and he's known for. He's got 4 films here. He's got X-Men: Days of Future Past, producer, Fantastic, producer, Logan, producer,
not writer, not in control of the story whatsoever. Whenever you put him in the writer's chair,
oh my god! In his writing credits, he announced Logan's Run.
Oh god!
Right.
Just don't.
He's got some Twilight Zone stuff in here. X-Men: Dark Phoenix, Star Wars Rebels. He wrote episodes of Rebels.
Well, an episode of Rebels is hardly a master overtaking. Anyway, I got to finish this list because we got to move on. Right. Venom, Let There Be Carnage tops off my worst list. I was not a fan of Venom, the first Venom. I didn't like the elements of it. I didn't like the bromance of it. I didn't like the CGI fight fest at the end of it. I didn't like the exclusion of the Spider-Man origin for Venom, but whatever. At least they seem to be trying. And what did they tease for the sequel? Fucking Carnage. And I like Woody Harrelson, and I think Woody Harrelson can play a deranged person very well. And I knew it was going to be a PG-13 film. I knew that. That's fine. You can still have an intimidating as fuck villain in a PG-13 film. There are plenty of good intimidating horror films that are PG-13 if done correctly. This was not. The entire movie is in the trailer. The movie is 90 minutes. It felt like a whole middle portion of the film was cut out. The Cletus Cassidy that I grew up on, the serial killer, the sick psychopath serial killer that did plenty of fucked up things, both in written form in the books and in the comics, gets reduced to a mental ward patient who misses his girlfriend. That is that's it. That is it. And it's dumb. There's so many leaps of logic in this film. Not to mention, there there were odd editing choices in this film. If you didn't see it in IMAX, you know how like in IMAX parts of the picture do get cut off, right? Because of the ratio change.
Mm-hmm.
I saw this in a regular cinema, so it wasn't IMAX, but it wasn't some weird ratio mix up. There were literally parts in this movie where they cut off Carnage's head. He was just like walking in the prison and his whole body wasn't there because of the editing choice for the ratio. It's like, what the fuck is this? There was weird editing choices. The fight scenes were just dumb and over too fastly. Too many characters thrown in here that I couldn't give a shit about. And then once again, they kill off the villain in the same movie. Guys, the only reason we didn't see Heath Ledger's Joker in a sequel was because of the real life tragedy that he died. But had he not died, Christopher Nolan had plans to bring him back. You don't create a good villain and kill him off. That's not the case of this film. In the case of this film, they had decades of source for an amazing villain, and then they turned him into this. It was a shit film, and it's just it was terrible. It was terrible, and it belongs in this list.
Let's talk. Let's do some more happy things, because so we've got our most surprising lists, and I'm gonna jump on these like super quick. For one, we've been going for like 2 hours now, and I need to eat, but I also don't want to talk spoilers or get in too deep about them. We've also done reviews for most of my surprises, so we'll dive in there. Do you have any honorable mentions for your worst films?
Honorable mentions. I think like I mentioned, Resident Evil. That film was just bad. I don't care if it was teased like it was supposed to be more faithful to the comics. It was bad. It was very bad. I didn't care for it at all. Trying to think of any other ones. Reminiscence was fucking shit. Oh, Infinite. Infinite was this movie that came out with Mark Wahlberg and Edgy Chiwetel Ejiofor and Dylan O'Brien. Terrible film that made no sense. Don't waste your time on it. Those were my biggest grievances outside of these.
I didn't have any honorable mentions. Like I said, I didn't even want to put up a worst list. I don't want to. I put up my most disappointing, and I feel like I went pretty hard on them already. So.
Oh shit! I forgot Home Alone. Home Alone, Sweet Home Alone.
I knew that was going to be horrible before I even finished halfway through the trailer. I was like, this is going to be garbage. I'm not watching this.
Yeah, but it surprised me. I almost put it as a surprise in a bad way because they made the villains sympathetic. Like you cared more about the villains than the kid. The kid was evil, and that was not the point of the film. The kid was evil. It's a terrible film, and totally missed it, Mark. But yeah, let's get on to your surprises because we got to get through this. So, Seth's surprises.
So, I'll actually start left to right this time. Ghostbusters Afterlife. I put this in my surprises because I was expecting it to be bad. I was expecting it to be nostalgia bait and fan service, and be the end of it. And it actually ended up being like a really pleasant, fun film.
Agreed.
I thought it was really well put together. I think that they kind of they pushed a little too far in the CGI, in bringing CGI Egon back. I was like, Harold Ramis is dead. I don't feel comfortable with this. It was the same way in Rogue One. I was just like, oh, okay, really, I understand why, but don't do it. They pushed it a little too much. And then Finn Wolfhard's character didn't need to be in this movie at all.
Oh no, he was clearly just for that Stranger Things crowd.
Right.
There's a pitch sketch on YouTube. It's like Ghostbusters. Throw that kid in there. What do you want him to do in the movie? Oh, nothing. Just put him in the movie. Like he doesn't need to be in it. Just put him in it.
Right. He's established in the sci-fi world now.
Yeah, talking about Home Alone. Jeffrey, if you haven't seen it, that it's a spot on thing.
Yeah, it ended up being a great movie. I can't remember the lead actress's name, the young kid, um,
Grace McKenna.
Grace McKenna. That was not even close to what I was thinking it was. I thought she was great. She did an excellent job. She's super charming on screen. She was super cute and also like dorky in like the best ways. So
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
I was
yeah,
super stoked.
female young Sheldon for sure.
Suicide Squad ended up on my surprises as well because I also thought this one was going to be crap because the first Suicide Squad didn't do well, and I thought Warner Brothers was going to come in and fuck with what James Gunn was going to do. I was pretty sure that it was gonna like there were some production issues that we had heard about. Like there was a bunch of shit going on, and there was a huge cast in the trailers. Like the trailers were showing a bunch of star studding, so it was just like, okay, I'm a little worried now. And then I go in and and James Gunn did a great job handling it. He was like, yeah, it is a big cast. That's why I'm killing off like 75% of them in the first 5 minutes of the movie. Here you go.
Yep.
Congratulations. Yep. This is why it's called Suicide Squad. Got it. Like, and then yeah, they did a great job. They bring in Idris Elba to play Will Smith's character, only they did him like the complete opposite way and in the best way.
Well, it wasn't the same character.
Well, no, it wasn't the same character, but like they couldn't get Will Smith again, so it was like, all right, let's get another Deadshot equivalent, basically. But then they bring him in. He's not the sympathetic father. He's not doing it for the right reasons.
Yeah, it's like the reverse.
And then
he
does do it for the right reasons. Like, good redemption. I like that. Like, this is really good. I never thought that I would care about a character who's covered in rats.
Yeah,
wasn't expecting that, but she did the best out of all of them. I cared about her character the most. Didn't give a fuck about Harley Quinn in this movie at all. Not even the slightest fuck about Harley Quinn in this movie, which is good. I didn't want to. I'm kind of sick of like. Honestly, I'm sick of Harley Quinn and Joker being trendy for people, for the mainstream internet. Like, I'm kind of annoyed by it because they're terrible characters. You should not be aspiring to be like them. And yeah, so I didn't give a fuck about her character in this movie, but everybody else was just like, this is great. And the comedy was super top notch. Thought it was hilarious casting Sylvester Stallone as King Shark. That was great. Amanda Waller did great. Her character was great. I can't remember the actress's name off the top of my head right now. It's gonna drive me nuts later. Super good job. I was expecting a suckfest, and I went in there, came out pleasantly surprised. Godzilla vs. Kong ended up in my surprises late, because when I watched it knowing what to expect. I was just like, this is just gonna be monster fighting and ridiculousness. I was like, whatever. Went in. That was the only expectation I had, and I paid about that much attention to it. But I've actually found myself throwing it on in the background a lot. When I'm working on editing or something like that, it's been going up on in the background, and I'm enjoying it. And like, there's stuff in it, like there's redeeming qualities in that movie. Still not the best as far as being put together, but like this movie knew what it needed to be. Like they knew that it needed to be a monster fight showdown, needed to be a rumble. But I think I had a soft spot for this one because it was doing all that Hollow Earth stuff, and I love like mysterious stuff about the planet like that. Like I get hooked on that shit easy. So this ended up in my surprise list. What if? What if showed up in my surprises because I was not expecting to like a Marvel animated animation feature as much as I liked this. When it comes to comic book animation stuff, DC in my mind has been and will be king probably continuously. So and most of the Marvel animated stuff that I've seen has been kind of like, all right. I kind of stopped watching Marvel animated stuff. So when they came out with this, it was just like, all right, what is this? And then they said that it wasn't going to be connected to the greater MCU. It was going to be more like what if scenarios, be like offshoots and stuff like that. So it's just like, I don't know if I'm really going to watch this. But as we got closer, it was just like, you know what? We're fresh off of the last piece of Marvel content. I'll give it a go. And I ended up really liking it. Like, they did a really good job. And I like that they were like separated stories, and then they brought them all together at the end, and like had it be cohesive. Like it was, I think they did a really, really good job with What If.
Hmm.
And Invincible ended up in my surprises because of the first episode. Uh, I went into it thinking that it was going to be a generic superhero show. It was interesting. The voice acting was good. You had J.K. Simmons in there. You had Steven Yeun. I was like, all right, I can get into this. The voice acting's really good. The animation style's kind of but like we'll see how it goes. And then the ending of that first episode kicks in. You're like, holy fucking shit! There's a gore fest on top of it. Man, the 180 that it went into is just nuts. And I loved it. I was like, this is excellent. Like this is like and then they went in there and honestly they put together. They actually did a really good job of putting in kind of like an element of how fucking terrifying Superman actually is.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, how much people should actually fear this guy. And just like the overall devastation of what could have happened if a bunch of Kryptonians had realized how strong they would be on planets other than their own, and then decided to do some sort of planetary conquest and be like, yeah, you're all fucked. There's nothing that you can do. And they made that very clear with Omni-Man. And it's just like, yeah, there's nothing that you can do. For being a character called Invincible, he sure as hell gets put out of commission an awful lot. But again, when you're fighting Omni-Man, not a whole hell of a lot you can do. And then that fucking subway scene, man. It's kind of hard to call that a scene, but that subway sequence was just like unbelievable. Like that whole fight was nuts. And so, like, if you have Amazon Prime, most people do these days. Let's be honest. If you have Amazon Prime and you're feeling like you need a superhero show that's honestly, Amazon, with the two superhero properties that I've watched out of them, the other one being The Boys. The Boys would have ended up on this list if it had happened in 2021, but it didn't, so fuck them. The second season started in 2022. I think it was done in 2021 or in 2020 as well. I'm getting my years all sorts of fucked up. But yeah, The Boys and Invincible. They're up in the gore. They're being like, you know what? We need some fucking gory, brutal superhero stuff now. And they're delivering. I say great. I'm stoked to see the next episode of Invincible. I'm actually probably going to pick up the omnibus so I can read the comic because I hear that it's actually reasonably faithful to the comic and it's really good.
Legend Comics has both omnibus in stock, and they're about to move out of their building. So I don't know if they're going to have a sale or anything. But if you want somewhere local, get it. They have both of them. Yep.
That's a weekend thing for me now. Yeah. So my surprises were all like pleasant surprises. I didn't have any that popped onto my list. Be like, wow, I was really expecting this to be good, and then it was like shockingly bad. I don't really have any honorable mentions. Like I kept it pretty tight. For the surprises world, but the biggest surprise was easily Invincible. I was and wonderfully surprised because I went into it with really low expectations, and then I came out to it and it was really, really good. It was really hard not to put it in my top list for this year, in my top 5 this year. It was a strong contender, and the only reason I didn't mention it as an honorable mention is because I had it on this list. So.
Well, I think
it is both a surprise and an honorable mention for my best of this year.
At another time in this year, it might have easily been the top of your list, but a lot of properties came out in the last 2 quarters.
That was a big one.
It definitely makes the most of its medium. Invincible was great. Again, I didn't want to copy some of your choices, so these are my surprises.
Wait. Which ones did you share?
Well, like I said, I totally agree. Invincible was fantastic. I think Invincible and the Suicide Squad were both surprises for me. Ghostbusters, while I have an affection for the original, I truly didn't give a shit if it was good or not. But my table mate in New York Comic Con, Alan, he got the chance to see it early, and his praises were well founded. I appreciated that. But the Suicide Squad, I hope that it was good. I didn't expect it to be that good, especially with like the plot that wasn't like crazy, but it was like crazy enough, and I liked it. It was really good.
Awesome.
And then the Invincible, having not known anything about the property, but knowing who made it, and knowing that there was a following around it. I did not know the twist. Thank God I didn't know the twist. And then after that, that just got me. It was good. It was really good.
So we talked about reaction channels. Watching reaction channels react to the first episode of that show is hilarious.
Oh yeah.
Oh, it's
and
great.
The crazy thing is the gamble they did like a fake credits for it, and I was like, that's a gamble, man. Like, but the whole thing, they sold the show on like this rated PG family animated superhero film. They sold the show like that, and then the whole first episode is like that with hints of something's not right, and then a fake out with the credits, and then that scene, and you're like, oh shit, and then the rest of the season. So
and everybody
thought
that it was a post-credit scene. It was like, no, that's just part of the show. They just don't bring the title screen up until somebody says Invincible.
Right, and I love
that it got periodically more bloody as the show went on too.
Yes,
that was a great touch.
I totally agree with that. I don't agree with you on Godzilla vs. Kong. Hated that movie. Going on to my surprises.
It still wasn't great, but it was a surprise that it was I'm rewatching it more than I thought it would.
So going from left to right, the Tomorrow War. This was a film that came out on Amazon. When I saw the trailer for it, I was like, what the fuck is this movie? It looks so bad. The trailer was so bad. It's basically about like there's a war in the future. We're losing so bad that we go in the past to recruit people to fight in the Tomorrow War. And Chris Pratt is one of the people gets recruited. Kind of sounds like a cool premise, but again, the trailer looked so. In fact, for the longest time, there weren't trailers. There were just like little snippets, and I was like, they can't even cut a trailer of this movie. And then the fact that it was not going to get a theatrical release, and it didn't feel like it was originally going to, and this was a COVID pandemic thing. It felt like nobody wanted to release it in theaters, and Amazon just bought it because they're fucking Amazon. They got fuck you money. They'll do whatever, but it just found like it landed there. Like, didn't even seem like anybody else wanted it. Then I watched it, and I was like, holy shit, this is actually super fucking fun. Like, I'm not a huge Chris Pratt fan, but it was great. The alien design was outstanding. Like, ever since Alien and Aliens, right. They nailed an iconic alien design. Ever since then, they did. Ever since then, most alien movies, they're either blobs that are just, they're not anything, or they're just humanoids that just aren't very intimidating. Like, it's rare for an alien to be as intimidating as Aliens. I'm not saying the aliens in the Tomorrow War are the alien films level, but they were different. They were different. Just like Edge of Tomorrow's alien, just dynamic and design was different. So were these. They were intimidating. They, when they did things like swarm mode and attack people, I was like, how are they going to survive this? I had a really good time. And then the movie could have ended at a certain spot. Then there was an entire third act that I was like, holy shit, they actually extended it and it worked. And J.K. Simmons was in it. It was good. Did you ever see this movie?
No, this one, like you said, the trailers looked like shit.
It was so bad.
Like a boring sci-fi movie.
Yeah.
And then the premise was kind of strange. It was just like, all right, so you have the ability to time travel, and you're using it not to prevent the war, but to bring troops back for the war.
And they answered that.
I'm sure they explained that pretty well.
Which is pretty good. Yeah.
I'm sure that they explain it in kind of like a similar way to like Endgame did. It's like, well, that's not actually how time travel works, or something like that.
All of my questions like that.
I'm gonna have to check it out now.
Like, it's not like an Oscar contender, but it was really good. And had I seen it in the theaters, I would have walked out saying, "Okay, that was not what I expected it to be." Yeah,
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, very, very happy with that. Kate,
I know a good amount about Kate. You really want me to see this one?
I do.
I'm sorry.
I do. I've complained about this a lot. I love John Wick. John Wick is the return of the 90s action fest that's just so crazy it works. John Wick is great. I do believe that the quality of the John Wick films are getting lesser and lesser with each installment. But there has been this trend of John Wick with other people. Bob Odenkirk did a John Wick film this year called Nobody. I did like it. I thought it was definitely a departure from what Bob Odenkirk normally does, but it definitely felt like a John Wick ripoff. I mean, it was literally John Wick with Bob Odenkirk. Same dynamic.
It was good, though.
It was good. But
I enjoyed it.
It was good. At least it was good. Then there was this film that came out on Netflix called Gunpowder Milkshake that was very much sold as the female John Wick. It had the style. It had the music. It had the color schemes. It had badass women in it. I was like, all right, I'll give it a shot. I mean, they sold it as female John Wick.
I remember you telling me that it sucked.
Shit choreography, shit story, all style, no substance, just bad. Okay. Then they came out with The Protege with what's her name from Nikita. Maggie Q. They came out with Protege. Maggie Q and Samuel L. Jackson and Michael Keaton. And while there were elements of that film that did work, it was another John Wick ripoff. It had a little better action, had a little more substance, but again, it failed to meet its mark. Michael Keaton was great as Michael Keaton, but the film was nothing. Well, then a third film came out, and this is all in the summer of 2021. Kate, and again, the trailer was badass female John Wick, lots of style, and I was like, oh Christ, I don't know if I can watch a third one of these. But I've always loved.
He's already dead.
Right. I've always loved what's her name, Mary Elizabeth Winstead. She, I'm trying to think of, like, she was in that Cloverfield Lane movie, 10 Cloverfield Lane. She was in Scott Pilgrim. She was in The Thing sequel. She's just great. She's great. I just love every time. She might not always be in the best movies, but when she's on screen, she's great. So I was like, oh, it's her and Woody Allen. Oh, my bad. Woody Harrelson. I'll give it a try. The movie was fantastic. The action. There was no 13 cuts. There was pan back, let these people fight. And when they did fight, it felt like a fight. It didn't feel like slow, choreographed, duck under. No, it was brutal fights. It was bloody. When one character who was supposed to be an assassin fought with another character who was supposed to be assassin, it felt like two assassins fighting. It was crazy violent. It was crazy fast paced. Lots of substance, lots of style. I love this movie to death. It's crazy. Like, she's badass. I hope she gets more action roles. I mean, it was just, I was blown away by it. So it has to be on my surprises, because honestly, I love Netflix, but it's a shot in the dark whether or not the film's going to be good. I just hope it's entertaining that I click on it to watch. This was great. Excellent film. You haven't seen that one yet either, but you should. The Novice. What's that?
You talked about Kate. You talked about The Novice a lot as well. In our last, I think it was our last episode, you talked about how good The Novice was.
Did I? Well, I'm going to say it again. It was fantastic. It's the directorial and writing debut of, let me bring up her name again because I want to make sure I say it right. It's Lauren Hadaway. She has a history in the business of being a sound editor for a lot of other films. She's worked on a lot of Zack Snyder films. This is her directorial debut, and it's her writing debut. This film.
Big comment is that the sound design was impeccable.
Well, it was, but I mean, the story was impeccable. I love obsessive storylines about someone who's trying to be great, whether it's Whiplash or Black Swan. they're like you want the character to achieve their dreams, but you see them spiraling and you see them like they're their own chaos, and it's unhealthy. And this is another one of those, and it was just so like I felt uneasy with this film. There were parts in this film that I was just like, oh my God, like it's not a horror film, but I almost felt sick to my stomach with the level of stress. And if you can make me feel that way just by the writing, you know, that's incredible. It elicited a response from me that I was not expecting from a movie about a college student who wants to be on the rowing team. Fantastic performance, fantastic directing. I don't know if it's too late in the year for this to be recognized for anything, or if she might be too young, or if it did. I don't know if it got picked up by any big distributors, but I watched it on a whim. Had not seen a trailer for it, just saw the poster and saw the headline of an article that says Zack Snyder's sound editor made her own movie over the last 2 years. And I was like, all right, I'm bored. I'll watch it. Crazy good. Loved it. And I love that type of stuff where I don't know anything about it and I walk away like, holy shit, that was good. Highly recommend. My next is Superman and Lois. The CW... it's a mixed bag. That
was like the perfect summary for the CW right now.
Yeah.
Just
I know.
That's so good.
I can't help it. I'm sorry.
God.
I'm sorry. I loved Smallville growing up. There was a lot of problems with that show, but I loved it. It was the renaissance of that launched a lot of the things that the CW is successful for now. And then Arrow was the next attempt. And I will always say that the first season of Arrow is one of the best seasons of a superhero show ever, because it covered so much ground and was done so well. It covered so many arcs. It covered a lot of things in one season. It covered what Smallville took 10 seasons to do in one season, and it didn't feel rushed. But then it fell to the same problems that every single fucking show on the CW falls into. And it's, how do we keep a compelling show compelling when there's 10, I don't know how, 7, 8, 9 seasons each with 20 to 24 episodes. I mean, that's somehow
right there. You
kill it
at 3.
When it's a brand new show, 24 episodes can work. Not normally. I mean, pretty much any show with more than 12 episodes, with more than 8 episodes, is bound to fail. But when it was its first show in a long time since Smallville, it kind of worked. But then every season past that, it was just the amount of filler episodes versus vital story episodes. That ratio kept on getting more and more extreme. I haven't even seen the last 2 seasons of Arrow, and I don't care to. It just and then it get
middle of 3.
Well, I think there's like 7 or 8. There's so many. And then The Flash came, and again, first season of The Flash had some really good things. But I think it's still going. And it just seems like, everybody from the cast to the crew just stopped caring about that show. The Legends of Tomorrow, I think, is another show on there. Anyway, it's got a long list of
Supergirl's on there.
Supergirl. Long list of shows that just got worse and worse in quality. And then they brought Tyler, I think his name's Tyler Hoechlin, on as the Superman for the small Supergirl show. And I liked him in Teen Wolf. Somehow back in the day, MTV launched a Teen Wolf show that was amazing. It was like dark. It had elements, nothing to do with the Michael J. Fox movie, but it was a really good show. And he was one of the leads. When they cast him as Superman, I was like, okay. I saw a couple of those episodes. Okay. Then they released a trailer for this Superman and Lois. And the trailer looked like Zack Snyder directed it. It felt like Man of Steel. It felt like a tonal difference from anything else the CW's ever put out, let alone their DC content. It did not have oversaturation of colors. It did not have stupid CGI villain fuckfest in your face. It looked like it was a down-to-earth story about a man that was going back home trying to raise his family in Smallville, a town that was on its way out. And I was like, man, if the first episode is any good as the trailer, I'll watch it. And it was amazing. The first episode of this show was amazing. And I was like, man, this sucks. Because I just know they brought in somebody for this first episode and the rest of the show is going to be like crap. Then this second episode was amazing. Then the third episode was amazing. This season is fantastic. And it had multiple breaks in it because of COVID. It's a great first season. Is it the best first season of a show ever? No. Are there some problems in it? For sure. But they kept the tone for the whole season. I doubt they'll keep that tone for future seasons, although the trailer for the second season looks good. I can't wait for it to come back. I think it's coming back in February. Or no, January 11th, this week. So good. If you haven't seen it and you just wrote it off as another CW project, I was blown away by how good it was. Really appreciated it.
I need to check it out.
Yeah,
I got through some of it, but not nearly enough to finish appreciating it.
Highly recommend. And it takes a lot to get my wife involved in the superhero project. She loved it. She was like, "Oh my god, this is good." There are elements of like mental health in there and acceptance and a lot of things. Really loved it. Great cast. Fantastic. I won't talk as much about this final movie other than just the fact that it was a movie of the week thing that dropped on Netflix. It's called Blood Red Sky. They sold it as 30 Days of Night on a Plane. And that's exactly what it is. It is.
I'm surprised that this is like the only horror title that ended up in your tops.
Well, I'm not. I mean, I like horror movies, but they're not like my preferred genre.
Okay.
And the only reason this is here is because I had zero expectations for this. The trailer was just like interesting, but I love 30 Days of Night. That is a great comic. It's a great movie. It was a bottle film. It was fucking freaky. It was great. And, there were other horror films that came out this year, like Jigsaw, that I just didn't care for. I mean, I liked it, but it didn't make it on this list. I wasn't surprised by it. It was just kind of lackluster, and that's what I expected it to be. I did not expect this to be any good, but I was like pulled in from the beginning. It's all about this mom and her son. They need to get somewhere. I think it's America. They need to get out of wherever town they're at. And she is, it's a British-German trailer, so movie. So it's not all in English, but there's a nice balance. There actually is enough English in there, so it's not all subtitles. But you're presented with this boy taking care of his mother who has an illness, and they're trying to get on this. It kind of felt weird with COVID, but that wasn't a COVID thing. But they're trying to get on this plane and get to America, and then you realize it's not an illness. She's a fucking vampire. And when she runs out of her drugs, it's like a person on withdrawal. And she's stuck on a plane with a bunch of other people. And then on top of that, if that's not already a bad situation, there are terrorists that take over the plane. And she gets pissed and she gets trapped and she doesn't have her meds. And it turns into 30 Days of Night on a Plane. And it was dramatic. It was violent. The ending surprised me. There's some emotional weight to this film that I did not expect. I just didn't expect to like it as much. By the end of it, I was like, holy shit, that's really good. And I did not expect it at all. I thought it was just going to be a stupid movie that would take some time. And I've been looking for a horror movie. I'll check it out. It's definitely not like, Silence of the Lambs, level writing or anything. It's got some dumb moments. The bad guys are pretty dumb, but the violence is there and the claustrophobia of it all. You're trapped in the air. You can't run. Okay. I liked it a lot. It was kind of a cool film, cool premise, executed very well. You can have a great premise and execute it terribly, and then it's just a waste. This was a neat bottle premise that they did really well with the blood, with the gore, with the choreography, with the camera work. Just great stuff. So those are my surprises. I don't really have any other honorable mentions that I can really think of. I watch. Oh, I do have 2 honorable mentions that are on my top 10 list, but wouldn't have made it on my top 5, and that is The Unforgivable with Sandra Bullock. It was a movie that dropped
she's an ex-con and
yeah, she just gets out of prison. It's got a crazy cast in it. It's got Vincent D'Onofrio in it. It's got wow, that's really zoomed out.
Smaller.
I know, and this looks terrible. It looks so bad. It's got a great cast. It's got Vincent D'Onofrio in it. It's got John Berthnall in it. It's got Viola Davis in it and Sandra Bullock. It's all about she is being released from prison. She's a cop killer, and she's trying to make it in life. And there's a lot of people that are like, why the hell did she get out? Why should she have a life? And it's a really compelling story. It has a twist at the end that I did not see coming, and it's acted very well. So highly recommend that one. My other very strong honorable mention would be, and it's crazy that I didn't even have No Time to Die in this. No Time to Die is a great film. I just didn't have that in my top. It was a great film that came out this year. I loved it. But this film, for some reason, I had no will to see. It's a Ridley Scott film. It's a Ridley Scott medieval film. I mean, from the dude that did Gladiator. He knows how to do these period type pieces, but for some reason, I just had no will to see it. But I finally watched it like 2 weeks ago, and it's great. It's a great film.
Been hearing really good things.
It's like it's got a crazy good cast. It's apparently based on a true French story about this woman who was sexually assaulted, and back then they had the most horrible laws. One of their laws was literally, you can't get pregnant from being raped. That was a law. So if a person claimed sexual assault, but then they ended up being pregnant, then it must not have been a rape. That was a law. That makes no sense, but that was a law. Anyway, she gets sexually assaulted, and the only, like, it's a he said, she said type thing. And the only way to solve it is for her husband to challenge her assaulter to a duel, to the death. And that is both the beginning and the end of the film. The meat of the film is seeing these major events from 3 different points of view. Matt Damon's point of view. I almost called him Ryan Johnson. That's not his name. What's Adam Driver? It's not Ryan Johnson. That's the director of terrible Star Wars films. Adam Driver's point of view, and then her point of view, and they're all great. They all cover the same points, but they're all just like slightly different, and you're like, okay, so which one is the real thing? And Jodie Corner plays a great center character. She's good in everything she does, but she was very compelling, and you're wondering up until the later parts of the movie which version is the legit version. And there's a lot of action in it. It's during some points in France's past where there was a lot of fighting and a lot of areas of the country going to battle, and Ridley Scott knows how to film that. Great action scenes, great tension, great cinematic end. And then you throw a blonde Ben Affleck in there, and that just tops off the cake. So really enjoyed this movie. I don't know why I didn't see it in theaters, but I'm kind of sad that I didn't, because I really loved it.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I heard a bunch about it, and now I'm like, I should probably rent it because I really want to see it now.
It's worth it. It's worth it. It's definitely heavy content. Like, it's not a fun film at all, obviously. But it's, I was like, damn. Ridley Scott, I believe he's a man up his own ass half the time, but he still knows how to do a good medieval film, and I loved it.
So, in closing, what is one thing that you are looking forward to for 2022?
Oh, gosh. I prepared all this for 2021 recap, and
Well, you don't have
do
to
you know
pull up
yours?
don't pull up a screenshot or anything like that. Like, no. It doesn't even have to be a movie or something like that. Like, it's like just
Oh,
what's
just anything in
like.
general?
I'm looking forward to catching more films that are not MCU or like DC comic or like non
Sure.
superhero films. Like, I'm really gonna put a real emphasis on making sure that I see more stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Specifically because there's going to be a lot of it coming out. They've got more shows, they got more movies and stuff like that coming. Um, but like a lot of the time, if I've been on time for seeing a release,
Mm-hmm.
it's been a Marvel production of some kind. I really and I'm not just by like seeing it on time, but like I really want to go to the theater more. Like I want to go back into the movie theater. I want to have that experience. Um, I'm still working on my on figuring out a way to not have to go to the bathroom in the middle of it, or and then just suffering through the entire movie until the end shows up and I'm finally able to go. I haven't found the secret sauce yet, but so far it seems like just not having any fluids for like 6 hours before showtime. And then even that's not helping. I drink a fuckload of water. I don't think people realize this, but I drink a
Just go
shitload of water.
go in a
Like,
spacesuit. You know, they've got filtration
right.
systems
I'm doing
built in.
like a fucking gallon of water a day, and I'm just like I can't fucking do a 3 hour movie. But
Mm-hmm.
no, I'm looking forward most to going to the theater more. So I'm hoping people are being fucking safe, and that these variants that we're seeing left and right aren't going to cause any further chaos at this point and
Mm-hmm.
bring us back down to the brink again. Although I don't see America going into a lockdown state again. I just don't see the country signing on for that. I don't
Well,
know how well
Is.
that'll go. Yeah, Canada
Canada is,
is, but
and New York's on the brink of it.
you know
Um,
we'll see what happens. Nebraska's numbers aren't that dire, but
yeah, well, as long as I
we'll see what
won't get into
happens.
politics, but I agree. I'm glad that we're getting enough back of the close to the way things used to be that we have other films coming out. Like, for example, that Antlers film finally came out, and I got to see it in theaters. It was good. It wasn't good enough to make my top list, but stuff like that. For a while there, it was just like F9 was the only movie that came out for like 3 weeks, and it's just
Yeah.
big enough, stuff like that. Whereas now, things are coming back. Studios are willing to put more films that aren't just big, super tentpole films coming out. I can't think of any smaller films that are coming out next year, but in terms of films that I'm excited for, of course, you got some major great Marvel properties coming out. I still don't think Wakanda Forever is actually going to drop this year, but it's supposed to. Um,
Yeah, I'm a little iffy on that too.
the
But we'll see.
Batman, oof, I can't wait for the Batman.
The
I,
Batman I'm
I
pretty stoked for.
I broke down and watched the third trailer. I never watch anything past the first trailer anymore, but I watched all three trailers. I'm a little worried I've seen too much now, but it just looks
Yeah,
beautiful.
I haven't watched the third trailer specifically because I wanted to avoid that same impulse.
It
I did
looks
reaction. We did
beautiful.
reactions to. I think we did. We both do a reaction to the first one. I know
I,
I did a solo reaction to the second trailer.
yeah, I think we did the first one together,
I thought
but
we did the first one together, but
that looks fantastic. I'm intrigued that we might actually finally get Avatar 2. We've been hearing about Avatar 2 through 5 for the past decade, and the 2 is supposed to drop this year. Again, I don't see it happening, but I want to see it. I want to see it, not because I think it's going to do well, but because I have to know what James Cameron has spent the last decade of his life doing. Like, Avatar 1 was a game changer on a lot of levels, not story wise. It was Pocahontas in space. It was Pocahontas and Ferngully in space.
right.
It was not that great of a movie, but visually it was amazing. I mean, the guy created new technology for 3D depth films. I saw that in 3D IMAX and it blew me away. It was amazing. And it took over the box office. It made shit ton of money. He got up there and said I was the king of the world again because it beat the other big top winner, which was Titanic, and then then we had Endgame and other things come after. But Avatar was a big movie, And then he spent the next 10 years working on 2 through 5. And just no part of me can imagine a world where those films are good. But I want to see what he's been doing. I want him to prove me wrong. I just can't imagine them being good. That just sounds like a horrible idea. And then
this man's wasting 10 fucking years of his life.
And he's filmed them back to back, and the dates have been pushed so far. And I'm just like, there's just no way they're good, but maybe they are. One more that I'm excited about is actually coming up here, if they don't end up pushing it, and that is Scream. I had no faith in this film. I saw part of a trailer.
One was actually not terrible.
Yeah. I just don't. I hate that all these films are coming back, that they're doing this. I think of Halloween was okay. Halloween Kills was fucking bad. I'm sorry. Bringing back the cast does not make it better. Just like I don't think the next Jurassic Park movie is going to be good just because they're bringing back the cast. It doesn't make the story better by bringing back the old cast. But I was bored. Last night, I ended up watching Scream, the original. And that was a fun movie back in the day. It was fun. It had some meta properties talking about horror movies. Jamie Kennedy was in there half the time talking about the rules of horror movies. It was fun. And it came from an era where horror movies were fun. I Know What You Did Last Summer, stuff like that. I liked those films back in the day. And they've just evolved into shit ever since. However, Scream got screened this week. And the responses are amazing. Like, I think everybody went into it thinking this is the January release of a franchise that's been dead for so long, and now they're bringing it back. And apparently everybody came out of it saying they loved it, saying it was amazingly good. And I can't imagine that it is. But if it is, that'd be fantastic. So I had no plans to see it.
A lot of optimism out here for 2022.
I've become a cynical fucking person. I'm telling you that. But I'm going to go see it next week. Maddie and I are going to go see it in the theater. I had no plans to see it, but I'm going to go see it. I just, everything's just being brought back. Top Gun. The only thing that makes me think that Top Gun is going to be good is because Tom Cruise is in it. Like, Tom Cruise has reached a level in his career where he just demands perfection. Like, I'd be hard pressed to think of the last Tom Cruise movie that wasn't good. Like, I'm not saying they're all like perfect, but especially with his Mission Impossible sequels, the man demands spectacle and demands something worthwhile. And he just kills it, man. And I just can't imagine him coming back to one of his biggest movies of all time for a lackluster sequel. Like, I just can't imagine that. So I think that'll be good. And I'm looking forward to it if it ever comes out. There's a lot of things coming out this year that The Northman, that looks really good. It's a Viking movie.
That's honestly why I can't narrow it down to something in specific.
Because there's so much.
I can't say that there's just one thing. So like the one thing that I'm excited about the most is actually just going back to the theater, doing it more regularly, like getting a chance to see more stuff on the big screen, see more stuff more on time, and like making the time to do so, and as a result making more content for this channel to really start pushing us a little bit harder, and to like really start to get content out there that like almost like, I don't want to say on a competitive level, but like up there, and kind of like seeing what we can do with this, because we've been doing Nerf Herders for over 2 years now, and it's weird to think about it, but like, I mean, I've been doing Nerf Herders for over 2 years. I think you've been here. I've been here almost 3 years. I started this, and it's been quite a ride. It's been quite a cool thing to kind of like get to geek out, get to have like an outlet where I can talk about this stuff, because CC doesn't give a shit. She doesn't care about how in depth I get into some of this stuff. She enjoys seeing me like having a good time to stuff with stuff like this, but she's not on that level. She ain't gonna get there. Um, and and so like to have like an outlet where I can like jump in here and like I can answer comments. I can see other people's reactions to stuff like this. Like it's a really cool community, and I really want to like thrust us forward into it more. And so that's my big thing for 2022 is just like being able to like catch more media. I've also got like a lot to look forward to because I've got a short film that we're gonna start filming this year. Like it's
That sounds
super
fun.
exciting. I've got my own short film that I'm writing that I hope I get the chance to. I hope I have the time to start filming this year. The plan is to have it filmed and like filmed and finished before the end of this year. Like I want to release it this year. Um, and so like it'd be really exciting to actually instead of calling myself an aspiring filmmaker, I can actually call myself a filmmaker. Like I want to be able to say that without having to correct myself every single time. It's like, oh, I'm an aspiring filmmaker. It's like, no, I don't want that. Like I want to have something that I can show people. Like I said, I've made music videos. I've done some stuff like that, but I don't call myself a filmmaker based off of those, or at least not to the degree that I want to. 2022 is going to be the year where I can start doing that, and we're going to take the nerf herders with us. I'm going to take the nerf herders with us. Um, I can't thank you guys enough for watching. Every single time I see like the subscriber count bump up, or I see a video's doing well. Like we're a small channel here. We haven't really kicked off yet. I'm loving it. Jeff Miller, like love that you are able to make it to the show as often as you do. You're a regular viewer, and I love it. It's great having you on board. Um, it's going to be pretty exciting to see where we can take this channel in 2022. Pretty stoked. We're going to be bringing more content to it. I know I've been talking about that. We've been kind of like slow rolling it to sort of to kind of get through the planning process and like get to the true end. Not even the end game. Like I want to start playing the game. We've been in practice for a while now, and now it's like, all right, it's time for kickoff. Let's do this. And 2022 is going to be the year. So like I'm really excited to see what that can do. I'm really excited to see what new content comes out that we can react to, that we can review, and the different ways that we can go about doing that. So yeah, 2022, reading more comics, watching more movies, catching more shows, and making more content for you guys. So Nerfers, I can't thank you guys enough for being on board. I hope you guys stick around. If you like this video, hit the like button. If you didn't, hit the dislike button. Nobody cares. You can't see it. Haha. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future content. Like I said, we're going to be bringing some new stuff to you. And you don't miss any live broadcasts. Like I want you to be part of the conversation. So hit us up in those comments below. Even if you didn't catch this live, hit us up in the comments. Hit us up on social media. Be a part of the conversation. And we'll see you guys soon. Have a good day.
See ya.